Chapter 497. Plop. A white jade chess piece landed on the chessboard. The young man smiled calmly and said, "Checkmate." The middle-aged woman sitting across from him stared at the chessboard for a long time, then shook her head and sighed, saying, "It's hard to attack when advancing and hard to defend when retreating. There are no reinforcements on the left and no good generals on the right. I lost this game again." Jiang Junling nodded with a smile, saying, "Auntie, you let me win." "I didn't let you win." Li Yun shook her head and sighed, saying, "I really tried my best." Jiang Junling picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip, saying, "Maybe men are more suited for the rough work of arranging troops and fighting." Li Yun chuckled, saying, "That's right. Whether it's arranging troops or fighting in the bureaucracy, men always have the advantage. Of course, the Qin family is an exception. That girl Qin Tian is pretty good at what she does. She's not much weaker than you guys." The smile on Jiang Junling's face didn't change. He looked at Li Yun and said, "You can't be envious of such things. Some people are God's favorite children, born with everything. Qin Tian must be God's own daughter." Li Yun sighed softly, saying, "A son should be like Jiang Junling, an adopted daughter should be like Qin Tian. What a good saying. I think the two of you are really a good match, standing together like a perfect couple, making people like you from the bottom of their hearts." The sharpness in Jiang Junling's eyes disappeared in a flash, then returned to normal. He said with an indifferent expression, "This kind of thing depends on fate. It can't be forced. Military orders, not that I'm being nosy, but I think men should be more proactive in this kind of thing. Just like the saying goes, a son should be like Jiang Junling, and there is only one Jiang Junling in this world. An adopted daughter must be like Qin Tian, and there is only one Qin Tian in this world. If you don't take the initiative, there are countless young people who will. What are women most afraid of? What she was most afraid of was a stalker. What if, and I mean what if Tian is snatched away by another man, how regretful would that be?" Jiang Junling smiled and said, "That's because we're not fated to be together yet. I can't blame anyone else. Sai, you are brave and resourceful in other matters, but you are too passive when it comes to matters of the heart. Why don't I go back to Yanjin a few days later and discuss it with Old Master, asking him to personally communicate with the Qin family? Looking at the Qin family's intentions, if the Qin family's Old Master made a move, this matter would be 40% successful. If you can get that woman to agree, then this matter will be 80% done. If you and Tian get along well, then wouldn't it be 100% done?" Jiang Junling pondered for a moment, then raised his cup to Li Yun and said, "If the wedding is successful, Auntie will definitely receive a gift to thank you." Li Yun covered her mouth and giggled. "You're treating me like an outsider. I'm just concerned about my nephew's marriage. Don't tell me I'm going to accept gifts. Since you don't object, I'll start taking care of it when I return to Beijing. I'm definitely going to be the matchmaker." Jiang Junling nodded and said, "Okay. Auntie will go back and prepare first. I still need to stay in Huaqing for a few days." Li Yun looked at Jiang Junling with a guilty expression and said, "This time the military order has been wronged." Jiang Junling smiled and said, "What's there to be wronged about? It's all for one's family." Li Yun sighed and said, "It's like playing chess. First you cut off your horse's leg, then you tie up your elephant's leg. How can you win this game? Feng Xing is stupid. He did such an outrageous thing and gave that Feng Yan a handle to threaten the military order and our family of generals. Otherwise, how could the military order be so passive? How could we agree to his greedy conditions? Don't worry about the gains and losses of one city and one land." Jiang Junling smiled and said, "Hasn't the new game just begun?" "Yes, the new game has just begun." Li Yun praised and said, "Pulling the Lan family into the game, this is an extremely ingenious move. Not only did it disintegrate the beneficial alliance that Lu Chaoga built in Huaqing with the Qin family as the main force and the Lan family as the auxiliary force, it also expanded a huge space for the Jiang family to move again. If the Lan family and them were on the same side, the Jiang family would be in a difficult situation in Huaqing. No matter how capable Jiang Zhulu is, he wouldn't be able to lead the rise of Long Tu. It's already difficult to breathe, how can you talk about waving a knife and snatching a cake?" However, things aren't going so smoothly. Jiang Junling's eyes became gloomy. Lan Mountain Valley actually did such a thing. It's indeed a bit unexpected. He's just a loach that likes to jump around. Li Yun sneered. Once he leaves the Lan family, he's nothing. I hope so. Jiang Junling said in a low voice. Fang Yan and I are just two chess players, we're busy placing the chess pieces on the chessboard. When the real day of victory arrives, I hope I'll be the final winner. Jiang Junling looked at the chessboard in front of him and said, just like just now. Li Yun looked at this confident man, her eyes sparkled and said, I believe that you'll definitely be the final winner. I'm ready. Jiang Junling said firmly, ready to welcome victory. The incident of Lan Mountain Valley leaving the Lan family was still fermenting in Huaqing, and it was getting more and more intense. Everyone thought that Lan Mountain Valley was crazy. If he wasn't crazy, why would he do such a crazy thing? Even the Lan family's internal members expressed their pity for Lan Mountain Valley's actions while happily scolding him for being an idiot. The most important thing in life is to make a choice. Before the result comes, who knows if it's right or wrong? When the outside world pushed Lan Mountain Valley to the teeth of the storm, Fang Yan was still living his simple and pure life. He woke up at 6 in the morning to exercise, took a shower and changed his clothes, and then prepared breakfast for himself and Lu Chaoga. Lu Chaoga was still resting at home. Fang Yan drove Lu Chaoga's car to the school for work. Fang Yan parked the car and was about to walk towards the school's security booth when the school's dean, Li Ziqiang, ran over and said while panting, Mr. Fang, I saw Principal Lu's car from afar and thought it was the old leader who came to the school for an inspection. I didn't expect it to be you who drove the old leader's car to work. Is Principal Lu all right? She's fine. Fang Yan said with a smile. I haven't seen the old leader for a while, I really miss her a little. Go back and help me ask when the old leader is free so that I can visit her. Li Ziqiang looked at Fang Yan expectantly and said. Fang Yan nodded and said, I will pass the message to her. But she has been really busy recently, I'm afraid she won't be able to find time for a while. The wound on Lu Chaoga's palm had not completely healed, and the wound on her neck was still scarring. Before the wound on her hand had completely healed and the scar on her neck had not completely disappeared, she probably wouldn't be willing to see anyone, right? Whether it was a woman or a goddess, loving beauty was innate to them. Of course, they were still male gods and loving beauty was also innate to them. Li Ziqiang naturally knew that Lu Chaoga was very busy now. The small fireball product was popular all over the country. As the creator of the small fireball, how could Lu Chaoga be idle? Sometimes, Li Ziqiang would also reflect on himself. He wondered why he had been blinded by lard back then and kept going against Principal Lu. Back then, when everyone was rejecting and suppressing Lu Xiaoga, he had resolutely stood on her side and become her loyal confidant. When she left, whether he continued to stay at the school or followed her to Chaoyan Technology, his life would have been more comfortable than it was now, right? I know Principal Lu is busy, but you must ask her to take care of herself, Li Ziqiang said with concern. I will pass on Director Li's concern, Fang Yan said. Li Ziqiang laughed heartily and said, Thank you, brother. We old buddies at the school are still waiting to attend your wedding with Principal Lu. When you guys are going to have a wedding, you must let us know in advance. I won't be at the table that day, I will stand at the door and be your guest usher. Fang Yan smiled and didn't explain much. Because more and more people knew that he and Lu Chaoga were living together, everyone thought that they were already a couple. As for the wedding banquet, wasn't it natural? Li Ziqiang patted Fang Yan's shoulder and said, Mr. Fang is busy, I'll go check on the students' military training. Children nowadays are getting more and more delicate. They feel that they have been wronged by a little scratch. Sigh, how can they bear it when they enter society in the future? Li Ziqiang walked toward the playground in the backyard of the school and Fang Yan walked from the inside to the security booth. The two of them went in opposite directions. When Fang Yan came to the security booth at the school gate, he saw Baldy and two colleagues gathered around the desk, as if they had discovered a new continent. Seeing Fang Yan come in, everyone looked at him with envy. Mr. Fang, someone sent you flowers. What kind of flowers are these? The purple ones are pretty. Mr. Fang, there's also a box with strawberry cake in it. Can I have a strawberry? Mr. Fang is outrageously handsome, it's natural for beautiful women to like him. Baldy looked at Fang Yan as if he wanted to say something. Fang Yan looked at Baldy and said, What do you want to say? The enemy's artillery is fierce, but no matter what, you have to hold on, Baldy said earnestly. He patted his chest as if he was facing death calmly and said, I will always be with you. A taxi parked in front of the school gate. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, who had disguised themselves with hats and masks, jumped out of the back seat of the taxi and ran toward the security booth of Rosefinch Secondary. Baldy didn't expect to see his idol again early in the morning after he had just separated from him last night. His face was full of surprise. When he was about to run out to greet them, Fang Yan grabbed his arm. "Director, I'm taking a day off today," Fang Yan said. Then he quickly walked over and pulled Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin into the school. "These two girls, do they want me to be on the news?" A few security guards at the security booth were full of envy and said, "Mr. Fang is the super king of security." Baldy felt very upset. His idol was good in all aspects, but his taste was too poor. Chapter 498. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin were very busy every day. The company had booked an afternoon flight for them, and they had to rush to another city in the evening to prepare for a new concert. This was their job and their responsibility. They went to bed too late after eating supper last night. They could have had a good rest at noon. The reason why they overcame the urge to sleep late and came to find Fang Yan early in the morning was that they wanted to spend more time with Mr. Fang. But only for a short while. Fang Yan knew that they were tired, so he didn't take them to walk too far to see any street attractions. He just wanted to find a remote and quiet tea house where they could sit together and drink tea and chat happily. It was an antique tea house called the Thousand Leaves Tea House. The reason why Fang Yan chose this tea house in this long alley at first glance and finally chose this tea house as the place to drink tea was because the name of this tea house made him feel very close. Qinyi. These two words represented a martial artist that was revered by others and a lady that was pitied by others. Heaven on earth, how are they doing now? Chiba Tea House, the name is quite interesting. Jiang Qin looked at the small wooden building and said, "The decoration is also very romantic. It's a bit Japanese style." Yuan Lin had a more accurate grasp of fashion. She looked at it carefully and said, "They mix the classical style of Wuxia and the traditional Japanese tea ceremony culture together, so it doesn't feel out of place. The owner of this tea house is a person with taste. And the owner is a girl, otherwise there wouldn't be such a delicate decoration style." Fang Yan pushed open the wooden door of the tea house, and a beautiful girl in a white traditional Chinese dress greeted him. She asked with a smile, "Do you want a private room or a private room?" "Mr. Fang, do we want a private room?" Jiang Qin took off the sunglasses on the bridge of his nose and said with a smile, "The air outside is fresher. Let's sit near the window, smell the tea and bask in the sun. It's so petty. This is the life I dreamed of when I was a child." Fang Yan smiled and said, "Okay. Then a private room. A window seat." The girl led the three of them to the wooden table and chairs on the boat, and then asked with a smile, "What kind of tea would you like to drink?" Fang Yan looked at the decoration of the tea house with great interest and asked, "Is the owner of this tea house surnamed Chiba?" "Yes." The girl nodded and said proudly, "Our master's surname is Chiba. Since his surname is Xianxia, he should be good at the way of tea. I wonder if the owner could brew a pot of tea for us?" The girl looked embarrassed and said, "Sir, I'm really sorry. The dojo master was busy and couldn't personally serve tea. I've also learned from the owner for 2 years. Why don't I serve a pot of tea to the 3 distinguished guests?" Fang Yan didn't mean to make things difficult for the girl. He nodded and said, "All right. Then you can make the tea. Just choose what you're good at." "Thank you for your understanding, sir." The girl bowed slightly to Fang Yan, then turned around to prepare the tea leaves. Soon the girl came back with a bamboo basket woven from a bamboo raft. Inside the bamboo basket was a white and elegant teapot and teacups, as well as a small plate of pale yellow tea leaves. "Sir, I'll brew a pot of Longjing tea for you." The girl sat in front of the tea table with her upper body straight. Just this sitting posture alone made people's eyes light up. She deftly and nimbly took out the teapot and teacups from the bamboo basket and then quietly waited. There was no electronic iron kettle on the tea table. Seeing Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin looking at her with puzzled eyes, the girl chuckled and said, "Please wait a moment. We don't use an electric kettle to boil water. That will destroy the nutrients and vitality of the water. We'll use charcoal fire to boil the water from the Lotus Temple's well. The tea in the tea house is fished out from a deep well in the Lotus Temple and then transported by carriage. The water from the well is sweet and clear, and it doesn't contain any bleaching powder or other toxic substances. You'll know when you taste it." Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's eyes lit up. "We found a treasure land," Yuan Lin excitedly said. This is the first time I've heard that tea needs to be made from a well. Jiang Qin grinned and said, I want to taste how good your Longjing tea tastes. Miss Jiang, Miss Yuan, we definitely won't let you down, the girl said with a sweet smile. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin were shocked. The two looked at each other. Jiang Qin stared at the girl warily and asked, You know us? I do know Miss Jiang and Miss Yuan, but you don't have to worry, the girl explained softly. The tea ceremony and music complement each other, especially classical music, which is the main component of our tea ceremony. Every staff member in our tea house has to listen to a lot of classical music, and there are musicians who specialize in performing for the guests. The Arasima group is very popular in Wuxia, and your classical and modern music perfectly blends together, making it very easy for the public to accept. Something we have to learn from. Last night the tea house master led all of us to your Treading on Snow for Plum Blossoms concert. We were fortunate enough to enjoy a feast for the eyes. I see, Jiang Qin said with a smile. I didn't expect to find a bosom friend here. May I ask how I should address you, sister? Yuan Lin took the initiative to ask. My name is Peony, the girl said. As he spoke, a young man in gray clothes brought over a pot of boiling water with white smoke. Peony immediately filled the pot with water and began to make tea. Her movements were as smooth as flowing water. It seemed that she had indeed spent many years immersed in the art of tea. Fang Yan nodded. Indeed, a great teacher produces a great student. Sister Peony, you said that your tea house has a musician as well. Could you ask her to perform for us? Yuan Lin smiled. Of course, Peony said. She waved her hand and another girl in traditional Chinese clothing walked over. Peony said, Sister Lily, Miss Yuan wants to listen to a song. Why don't you play for them? The girl blushed slightly and said, Then I'll just have to show off in front of an expert. I don't play well. Miss Jiang, Miss Yuan, please teach me. We're looking forward to it. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin clapped and cheered the girl on. The girl walked over to the guzheng in the corner and sat down. She calmed herself down, and the sound of the song flowed out like a gentle breeze or the dripping of rain. When will the Lord return? Jiang Qin looked at Fang Yan and explained softly. Fang Yan nodded and listened attentively to the girl's performance. When Lily finished playing, the three of them applauded enthusiastically. Lily walked up to Yuan Lin and said with a red face, Miss Yuan, I wonder if you could give me some pointers? I feel like I didn't play very well at the last part of the song. Yuan Lin nodded and said, There are some flaws. Longing for the return is a kind of deep expectation, not a kind of despair and sadness. I'll play it once and you can listen carefully to the differences, okay? Thank you, Miss Yuan, Lily said excitedly. Yuan Lin walked over to the guzheng and sat down. She looked at where Fang Yan and Jiang Qin were sitting and quickly found the state to play. The fingers of both hands plucked on the strings. It was affectionate and made people feel a sense of loneliness and helplessness. When the song reached its climax, the wooden door of the tea house was forcefully pushed open with a bang. A group of men rushed into the tea house and occupied the largest table by the window on the right. The leader was a man in black trousers and a white shirt with a checkered vest over it. He had square eyes, thick eyebrows and thin lips. With a cheeky smile he said to Lily, Ask your owner to come out and make a pot of tea for me. Mr. Du, I'm sorry, our owner is not here. What tea do you want to drink? I'll make it for you, okay? Lily seemed to be very afraid of the young man and her smile was flattering. But a man in black slapped the table and scolded, You're going to make tea? Who do you think you are? How can our president Du swallow the tea you make? Ask your owner to come out or we'll smash your shop. Little Black, how many times have I said that you should be polite when talking to girls? The man in the waistcoat stopped the man beside him from showing his power. He looked at Lily with a smile and said, These guys are all rough people. They haven't read many books, so their words are not very pleasant to hear. Miss Lily, don't lower yourself to their level. It doesn't matter. Lily said with a smile, I'll make a pot of tea for Mr. Du. What tea does Mr. Du want to drink? Lily, I'm sincere to you. Don't deliberately deceive me. You know that I'm here to see your owner. Ask her to come out and make me a pot of tea. I'm not a tiger. Can I eat her in one bite? Mr. Du, our owner is really not here. Pop. Lily's face was slapped by the man in black named Little Black. Little Black wanted to slap again but was stopped by the man in the waistcoat who said, Okay. I brought you here to drink tea. I want to cultivate your temperament so that you won't get angry easily like a bunch of donkeys. We're still talking, how can you hit me? Little Black apologized to Miss Lily. Little Black glanced at Lily coldly, but he didn't mean to apologize. The man in the waistcoat smiled bitterly and said, "These stubborn donkeys, I really can't do anything about them. Lily, go and ask your owner to come out. I've been here every day this week. Except for the first 2 days when I could see your owner. Your owner has been avoiding me these days. This is not the way to treat a guest, right? Mr. Du, it's not that our owner doesn't want to see you. She's really not in the shop." Clang. The man in the waistcoat kicked Lily's stomach. Lily screamed in pain, fell back to the ground and then rolled over repeatedly. She knocked down several tea tables and several pots of flowers. Chapter 499. The man in the waistcoat snapped his fingers, and the lackey next to him immediately handed him a thick cigar. Another lackey with sharp eyes and quick hands quickly lit the cigar for him. The man in the waistcoat took a puff of the cigar, and a large amount of smoke came out of his mouth. He stared with contempt at Lily, who was lying on the ground, unable to move, clutching her stomach but not daring to cry out. He sneered and said, "Bitch, I gave you face but you don't want it. I'm talking to you nicely but you treat me like a fool. If you dare to say that the dojo master isn't here again, do you believe that I won't sew your mouth shut?" Lily's eyes were moist and tears kept flowing, but she didn't dare to refute the man in the waistcoat. She knew what kind of person the man in the waistcoat was, and she also knew that this man could do everything he said. The man in the waistcoat pointed at Lily with his cigar in his hand and said, "I'll tell you one last time, get your master to come out. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you for an IQ insult fee." Xiao Hei kicked out and a tea table beside his feet flew out. Crack. The tea table smashed into the wall and broke into pieces. Even the wall that had been built rustled and fell to the ground. "Xiao Hei, you idiot," the man in the waistcoat scolded with a smile. "I mean, if their dojo master doesn't come out, I'll ask them for an IQ insult fee. Now that the dojo master hasn't decided whether she wants to come out or not, why did you make the first move? Do you want me to come out or do you not want me to come out?" Xiao Hei smiled honestly and stood at the side, no longer smashing anything. Instead, he looked around coldly. When he saw Fang Yan and the others sitting not far away, he shouted angrily, "All of you get out of here." Yuan Lin was just comparing skills with Lily, but in the blink of an eye, Lily was beaten to the ground. Her expression was extremely ugly as she scolded, "You hooligans are going too far." The men in black laughed. A thin bald man stared at Yuan Lin lecherously and said, "Miss, you have a sharp eye. We are really hooligans." Hearing the baldy's witty words, the group of black-clothed men laughed even more happily. Jiang Qin was worried that Yuan Lin would be at a disadvantage sitting there alone, so he quickly got up and walked over to stand with Yuan Lin. When the black-robed men saw Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, these two pretty and lively girls, their eyes lit up, and some of them kept swallowing their saliva. Good luck, good luck. Originally, I wanted to accompany boss to pick up girls, but I didn't expect to see such a hot chick. Brothers, don't fight with me. I've decided on the girl sitting in front of the piano. I've always been scolded for not having artistic cells in my life. I want to study with this girl what artistic cells look like. Idiot, that's not a piano, it's a guzheng. Hehe, I want the girl with long hair, I like the oval-shaped face. Shut the F***ck up, the man in the waistcoat shouted in a low voice. The hooligans didn't know what was going on and just looked at their boss in confusion. Could it be that he wanted to hog it all for himself? The boss looked at the two little girls affectionately. This kind of thing could really happen. The man in the waistcoat looked at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin in confusion, and asked uncertainly, "You two, are you the Arasima group? You don't need to know who we are. What right do you have to hit us?" Yuan Lin said with a face full of anger. Jiang Qin didn't say anything, he just walked over and wanted to help Lily up from the ground. The kick from the man in the waistcoat was too heavy. Jiang Qin couldn't help Lily up even if he used all his strength. Lily's stomach hurt badly when she moved a little. It seemed that her internal organs were seriously injured. "Oh, the little girl's temper is quite big." The man in the waistcoat squinted his eyes and smiled. "I originally wanted to ask about it clearly. If you are the Arasima group, I would more or less give you some face since you are also people of the scene. Since you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame my brothers for being impolite. So what if you are the Arasima group? When we support you, you are high and mighty, but when we step on you, you can only lie on the ground or crawl on the bed like a dog. Without needing the man in the waistcoat to order, the little baldy impatiently rushed in the direction of Yuan Lin. The other men in black were not willing to fall behind. They all followed behind the little baldy and rushed in the direction of Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin. The faster the hands, the slower the hands. They couldn't let their brothers snatch this kind of thing first. "Duchun, don't touch my guests," a sweet voice shouted aloud. It was like a cool spring, like a mouthful of rose dew. Even if it was said in anger, it made people feel like they had drunk fine wine. The bones of their whole body softened a bit. A tall woman wearing a cheongsam embroidered with cherry blossoms walked down the stairs from the second floor, like a flower goddess who had been banished to the mortal world. Seeing that familiar yet strange face, Fang Yan's mind was a bit absent-minded. It had been 3 years. It was really a long time. It had changed too many people and too many things had happened. Thank God, at such a time, on such an occasion, they were able to meet again. Forced by the woman's power or beauty, the gangsters stopped and waited for the next order from their boss. The man in the waistcoat looked at the woman coming down the stairs in amazement. He put out the cigar in his hand in the ashtray, stood up from the chair and said with a gentle smile, "I knew you were here. If you had come down earlier, my little friends wouldn't have dared to be presumptuous in front of you." He waved his hand and the men in black immediately retreated. The cherry blossom woman walked in front of the man in the waistcoat in high heels, squatted down to help Yuri and asked with concern, "Yuri, how do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" "Master, my stomach hurts," Yuri said with a face full of tears. The man in the waistcoat's kick was sharp and fierce, and the girl's delicate body couldn't bear it at all. "Don't be afraid, it will be fine. I will take you to the hospital now." The cherry blossom woman held Yuri's hand and comforted her. I'll do it," the man in the waistcoat said attentively. "It's my fault. If I hadn't brought these boorish men here, Miss Yuri wouldn't have been injured. I will bear the responsibility. I will send someone to take her to the hospital." The man in the waistcoat waved his hand and 2 men in black came over to move the girl. "No need," the cherry blossom woman refused. "I will take care of my family myself." "Your family is my family. Why are you being so polite with me?" The man in the waistcoat said with a smile. "What are you waiting for? Quickly send her to the hospital for a full body checkup. You idiots, you can't do anything but spoil things. In the future, don't hurt people so easily. Can't you think before you do something?" The gangsters were timid and they didn't have the courage to tell the truth. "If you don't take the blame for the boss at this time, what does the boss want you to do?" I said no. The cherry blossom woman's voice suddenly rose, and she stared angrily at the men in black who ran over to take Yuri away. All right, all of you come back." The man in the waistcoat called his men back. He squatted down to support Yuri's arm and said, "I will accompany you to take her to the hospital for a checkup. Don't worry, I will bear all the expenses." Yuri avoided him in fear as if she was avoiding a poisonous snake. She didn't dare to let the man in the waistcoat touch her body. "I don't need you." The cherry blossom woman pushed the man's hand away. The man in the waistcoat's face turned cold and he said, "Chibaku, are you rejecting me?" "Yes." The cherry blossom woman's voice was very firm and she said, "The answer is the same as the first time. I don't like you. Not only do I not like you, but I also hate you. The women of our Chiba family will never like a hooligan without a sense of morality. That is an insult to the Chiba family and an insult to the God of Swords family." The man in the waistcoat's face changed several times, and then he slapped the cherry blossom woman's cheek. The cherry blossom woman actually had some martial arts background, and she tilted her head back just in time to avoid his attack. "Interesting." The man in the waistcoat laughed sinisterly. "You dare to dodge? I'd like to see how long you can hide." As he spoke, he slapped the cherry blossom woman's face again. Slap. His arm was raised in midair, but he couldn't swing her down no matter what. Someone grabbed his arm and there was a big hand on his wrist. The man in the waistcoat looked up and saw that it was the young customer who had been drinking tea by the window. He said with a face full of sarcasm, "If I were you, I would immediately kneel down and kowtow 3 times and then scram as far as I can." "I don't think so," Fang Yan said. He began to exert force with his palm. Crack, crack. The sound of soybeans being stir-fried could be heard. Let go. The man in the waistcoat hadn't felt the pain just now. By the time he truly felt it, the pain was already unbearable. His breathing became rapid and even the pain made it difficult for him to breathe. The muscles on his face kept twitching as if he had just received an electric shock. No, he was currently receiving an electric shock. Tears came out of his eyes. Yes, they were really tears. They were the things that he had thought were the most fragile and cheap. It was a heart-wrenching pain, a pain that burned his soul. He wanted to scream, but even so he had lost the strength to do so. The man in the waistcoat's arm began to change shape and then it began to twist. In the end, it turned into a sausage that seemed to be supported by nothing hard. When Fang Yan let go of the waistcoat's wrist, the man had already collapsed to the ground like a pile of mud. Fang Yan had broken the bones of the man's hand inch by inch with his soft force. Even the most brilliant doctor couldn't repair them. Chapter 500. Because the pain almost made him faint, but because of the pain he kept his brain awake. That kind of pain was like a steel knife, cutting into the deep cortex of his brain again and again. It made his whole body tremble in pain, but he could clearly feel the process of the steel knife cutting into the cortex. The man in the waistcoat didn't expect that he would encounter such a devastating blow when he just came to a small tea house to drink tea and flirt with girls. Fang Yan appeared too suddenly and clasped the wrist of the man in the waistcoat. When the men in black found that their boss was caught, they couldn't act rashly. When Fang Yan took the initiative to release the wrist of the man in the waistcoat, Du Chun's #1 thug Little He, who had long been on guard, immediately rushed toward Fang Yan and stabbed the sharp dagger in his hand toward Fang Yan's chest. This guy was ready to cut Fang Yan's chest open. Little He didn't know any martial arts, nor did he have any magical inner strength mental cultivation method. But he was naughty since childhood and was invincible in the whole street. His skills were honed through hundreds of battles, big and small. They were simple and fierce, without any fancy or superfluous moves. Fighters were most afraid of killing intent. There were two ways to cultivate killing intent. One was to be cruel to the enemy, and every move must take the enemy's life. The other was to be cruel to oneself, not afraid of death and only to hurt the enemy. Little He was the kind of person who was cruel to the enemy. Even if it was the first time they met, he still put on a posture of stabbing. It made people feel cold and easily lose the ability to fight. If an ordinary person met an opponent like Little He, the best and most appropriate way was to turn around and run, or squat down with his hands on his head and beg the opponent to be a little gentle. Unfortunately, he met Fang Yan. Fang Yan never used his martial arts to bully others. However, if others wanted to use force to bully him, his counterattack would be particularly cruel and fierce. Fang Yan's body was perfectly straight, standing in place without dodging or evading. His eyes were filled with ridicule as he stared at Xiao He. He had a cold and aloof attitude, as if saying, "Come at me, I can send you flying with one slap." Xiao He felt insulted and became even angrier. Originally he had only used 60% of his strength, but now he increased it to 12%. He used all the strength in his body to stab at Fang Yan's chest. He wanted to use this stab to stab a big hole in Fang Yan's internal organs. Quang quang quang. Their bodies were extremely close to each other. Pop. Little Black stabbed out, but the blade did not enter Fang Yan's body. The blade carried a gust of cold wind as it flew towards Fang Yan. However, the blade stopped a few centimeters away from Fang Yan. Fang Yan held the blade between his two fingers as if he was holding a strand of hair between his fingers. Little Black's face was full of fear. He pulled out his saber and wanted to retreat. He felt a sense of danger, the kind of powerlessness that an egg would feel when facing a rock. How could Fang Yan let him go so easily? With a flick of his finger, the dagger appeared in his hand. Before Little Black could turn around and leave, Fang Yan had already stabbed the dagger into his left ribs. Little Black gave a muffled groan, his body retreated and then fell to the ground. Blood seeped out from the gaps between his fingers that were covering the wound. Drop by drop, it was as if it was in a hurry to gather on the bluestone ground. From Little Black's attack to Little Black's fall, all of this happened in a flash. The other black-clothed men saw that Little Black, who was the most capable and the best among them, was taken down in less than a round, and his body was ruthlessly stabbed by someone. Each and every one of them was like a frightened bird, looking at each other, not daring to rush forward. Fang Yan's eyes swept across their faces. They all collectively took a few steps back. You, a man in black stuttered, "Do you know, who did you offend?" You're dead, no one can save you. Tell Du Qing to come see me. Fang Yan glanced at them and said expressionlessly. Du Qing? Everyone looked at Fang Yan in horror. Hearing Fang Yan take the initiative to mention Du Qing's name, they were even more shocked than when Fang Yan stabbed Little Black. He knew who Du Qing was, but he still dared to injure his junior? He knew who Du Qing was, but he still dared to stab his little brother? He knew who Du Qing was, but he still dared to say that he wanted Du Qing to come see him. Was he sick? Was Du Qing someone that anyone could see just because they wanted to? Was Du Qing someone that anyone could see just because they wanted to? Scram! Fang Yan shouted coldly. Crash! The men in black were in a panic. Du Chun, whose arm was crushed, was carried away by them. Little Black, whose ribs were stabbed, was carried away by them. In less than a minute, there was not a single hooligan left in the Chiaki tea house. They had all left, except for the pool of blood on the ground and the broken flower pots on the coffee table that proved that they had been here. Fang Yan then looked at the cherry blossom woman who was looking at him in surprise and said with a smile, Chiba Kori, are you all right? Mr. Fang, the cherry blossom woman called out happily, I didn't expect to see you here. I just happened to pass by and saw the Chiaki tea house's signboard, so I wanted to come in and have a seat. Fang Yan explained, can I help you take a look at your colleague? Thank you, Mr. Fang, Chiba Kori said gratefully. Compared to 3 years ago, her Wuxia language had improved by leaps and bounds. With her current performance, she could even become a broadcaster at a TV station. Fang Yan squatted down, held Yuri's wrist and felt her pulse. He said, there's a blockage in her stomach. If she doesn't get rid of it, it will have a great impact on her body. I'll write a prescription. After you get the medicine, she'll be fine after taking it for 3 days. As Fang Yan spoke, he had already walked to the edge of the desk that was specially prepared for the guests in the tea house. He dipped the brush in ink and wrote a prescription on the white rice paper. Then he handed the white paper to Chiba Kiru and said, simmer the medicine for 2 hours and pour it out. Wrap the hot medicinal dregs with a clean gauze and wipe it on your stomach. This can help to remove blood clots and also has the effect of cleansing the uterus and detoxifying the uterus. When the medicine is cold, drink it. Let her go back and rest for a few days. Don't come out to work for a few days. While Chiba Kori arranged for someone to get the medicine according to the prescription, she also asked Peony and a waitress named Money to send Yuri back to rest. After dealing with the matters in the tea house, Chiba Kori looked at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin and said, Mr. Fang, Miss Jiang, Miss Yuan, if you don't mind, can I make a pot of tea for you to try? Fang Yan said to Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, Chiba Kori is from East Asia. She's proficient in the tea ceremony. I'm far inferior to her. Chiba Kori chuckled and said, you still lost to Qini Tian. Jiang Qin's eyes flashed as he looked at Chiba Kori and asked, Mr. Fang, is Sister Chiba Kori also your student? Yes. Chiba Kori nodded and said, I used to be Mr. Fang's student. It's just that I didn't have enough time to learn much about Mr. Fang's profound knowledge. Yuan Lin giggled and said, Mr. Fang, why do I feel like all your students are beauties? Whether it's Sister Qin or Sister Chiba Kori, any one of them is on the same level as the prettiest girl in the city. Isn't it unfair to the other teachers that there are so many of them in your class? Maybe it's because I'm more popular, Fang Yan said with a smile. Fang Yan was very happy to meet an old friend in a foreign land. Chiba Kori was someone that Fang Yan respected and missed. Chiba Kori was the daughter of his old friend and his former student. With these two feelings, Fang Yan naturally hoped that she could live a happy life. Chiba Kori was making tea. She used the same tea leaves and the same tea water, but the taste was very different from before. Moreover, Chiba Kori's tea-making technique was very complicated and beautiful. There is an almost religious piety in performing some of the ancient movements. Yes, Chiba Kori's religion was the tea ceremony. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's faces were filled with admiration. They didn't expect the act of making tea to have so many steps, and the process was so pleasing to the eye. Jiang Qin was suddenly inspired and he said happily, Sister Chiba, I want to write a song about the tea ceremony. If I need your help, don't say no. Of course not. Chiba Kori smiled gently. Promoting the tea ceremony has been my lifelong wish. Fang Yan looked at Chiba Kori and said, Are you promoting the tea ceremony of Wuxia or Japan? I'm promoting the tea ceremony of Wuxia and Japan, Chiba Kori said. Fang Yan was stunned and he said with a smile, I was too stubborn. My father was also a stubborn person. That's why he made that choice. Chiba Kori's eyes were a little gloomy. Clearly, she still hadn't gotten over her father's death. You men have a longer and narrower heart. I'm a woman. I just like the tea ceremony regardless of whether it's Wuxia or Japan. That's all. Back then you told me that you'd stay in Wuxia. I didn't expect you to really not go back, Fang Yan said with a sigh. I can't leave. Chiba Kori shook her head. Mom went back and so did my brother. If I leave too, he'll be lonely. Although he never said it, he's very afraid of being alone. I miss him too, Fang Yan said. I visit him often. The more I see him, the more I feel that he's a great person. While they were chatting over tea, the glass wooden door of Chiba Tea House was pushed open by two men in black. Chapter 501. The two men in black pushed open the glass wooden door, one on the left and one on the right, and then stood on both sides of the wooden door. A man in a dark blue suit with a scarf around his neck walked in, followed by a tall and beautiful woman. Du Qing was here. He was cultured and elegant with a strong scholarly aura around him. If no one introduced him, it would be hard to tell that this man was the king of Huaqing's underworld. When Du Qing saw Fang Yan, he laughed and walked over saying, Brother Fang, long time no see. You look even better than before. Fang Yan stood up and shook hands with Du Qing. Then he said with a smile, Mr. Du, you look like you're riding on the crest of success. Compared to 3 years ago, you look even younger. Really? Du Qing was overjoyed. I wouldn't believe it if someone else said it, but since Brother Fang said it, then I'll gladly accept it. Brother Fang, you left for 3 years. How could you be so heartless, not even giving brother a call? Not even leaving a message for brother? I went to visit the Liu family a few times and asked about your situation, but he didn't want to say much, only saying that he was being filial at home. The smile on Du Qing's face disappeared, and his big hand held Fang Yan's hand tightly, saying, Brother, I was worried, so I asked someone to ask around, but I didn't expect to hear such grievous news. I immediately called you, but I couldn't get through. Brother, it's a little late to say this, but don't be too sad. Thank you, Brother Du, Fang Yan said gratefully. His father died in battle and Fang Yan was disheartened. Because Fang Yan decided not to return to Huaqing for the time being, the phone was constantly ringing and it was abnormally noisy. In order to completely calm down, Fang Yan turned off his phone. This turned off for 3 years. No matter if Du Qing's concern was sincere or not, Fang Yan still owed him a favor for being willing to call and comfort someone at that time. What are you thanking me for? I didn't help much, it's my fault, Du Qing said with an apologetic expression. Fang Yan invited Du Qing to sit down, and said to Li Ya, who was standing behind Du Qing, Miss Li, please take a seat. Li Ya stood beside Du Qing and said mockingly, I never thought that Mr. Fang would still remember a small fry like me, it's really flattering. Li Ya's words were filled with thorns, but Fang Yan did not think much of it and said, My memory has always been good. I can even remember the name of a kitten or puppy that I've dealt with before. Fang Yan, don't go too far. Li Ya slapped the table and shouted angrily. Li Ya. Du Qing waved his hand, signaling Li Ya not to be rash, and said, Sit down and drink some tea. Li Ya did not dare to disobey her uncle's orders and angrily sat beside Jiang Qin. Du Qing chuckled as he looked at Fang Yan and said, Children have a stubborn temper and have been sulking with me the whole way. Children are still immature and quarreling with their parents is a common occurrence. Brother Du, don't take it to heart. Fang Yan comforted her. Fang Yan, who's a child? Who's immature? What did my brother do for you to beat him up like this? What kind of deep hatred do you have for him to crush someone else's arm? Do you know that he's already ruined? That hand is already ruined. The doctor said that it can't be cured and that it will never be cured. Li Ya shouted with red eyes, her eyes filled with burning hatred. Du Chun was not Du Qing's son, but the son of Du Qing's younger brother. Du Qing's father was a carpenter. Once, when he was working on a beam, he fell and broke his leg, causing the family's living conditions to plummet. Du Qing dropped out of school early and after entering society he joined a gang. Later on he was supported by the gang leader, and quickly completed his primitive accumulation. Only then did he have his current status and wealth. However, Du Qing's younger brother, Du Hong, inherited his father's business and became a carpenter. He stayed in his hometown to build houses and make furniture. Du Hong did not have any education either, and he enjoyed his job as a carpenter very much. He stayed in his hometown to take care of his parents and was unwilling to come out, so Du Qing brought his younger brother's youngest son, Du Chun, out. Du Chun was Du Qing's nephew and he owned a few bars. With Du Qing's care he lived a happy and comfortable life. Du Chun knew that his uncle liked Leah, so he tried to get close to Leah. The two of them had a good relationship. Du Chun had a hotel by the river nearby. One time when he came over for tea with his friends, he saw Chiba Kori performing the tea ceremony for the guests. He was shocked and chased after her repeatedly. Chiba Kori rejected him twice, but Du Chun did not give up and continued to come to the tea house every day. After not seeing Chiba Kori for a few days, Du Chun's gentlemanly and gentle appearance disappeared. He became more and more impatient and he became harsher and harsher to the staff of the tea house. This time he brought enough people preparing to smash the tea house if Chiba Kori tried to avoid him again. However, he did not expect to bump into Fang Yen Jiangqin and the others who had come to drink tea. Du Chun was acting cool to his heart's content, and someone could not stand it anymore. Fang Yen struck out with lightning speed and instantly exterminated him. They were the same kind of people, why rush to torture each other? Leah and Du Chun had an extremely good relationship, and the news of Du Chun being injured and hospitalized quickly reached Du Qing and Leah's ears. Leah wanted to rush to the hospital to visit Du Chun, but Du Qing said that he wanted to visit Fang Yen directly at the tea house. The two of them had different opinions. Leah said that Du Qing did not care about Du Chun's life and death, and did not give Du Qing a good look along the way. Du Qing was a generous elder, so he naturally would not lower himself to Leah's level. However, on the way they received a call from the hospital, saying that they had already examined Du Chun's body. The bones in Du Chun's right arm were shattered and he was completely crippled. There was no possibility of recovery. When Leah heard the bad news, she cried on the spot. When she saw Fang Yen, her attitude was naturally bad and she wanted to rush up and tear off a piece of his flesh. He didn't do anything. Fang Yen said indifferently. Nothing? You didn't do anything yet you beat him up like this? Just crushing other people's bones? Leah stared at Fang Yen in disbelief and said, Are you a pervert? He only brought people over to smash someone else's shop and injure the staff of the tea house. Actually, it's not a heinous crime. Fang Yen pointed at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin and said, Oh, he even ordered the group of little bastards he brought to molest the two of them. If they were to molest Miss Li, how would Miss Li deal with them? Leah choked. Oh right, we can also make some deductions and hypotheses. He has always wanted to pursue one of my students, the owner of this tea house, Miss Chiba Kiru. Because Miss Chiba Kiru rejected his feelings, he became more and more violent. Just now he wanted to slap her in front of us. If Miss Chiba Kiru rejected him more thoroughly or made him completely give up, what else would he do? Fang Yen looked at Du Qing and asked, Brother Du, guess what else would he do? One arm is not unjust, Du Qing said in a deep voice. He raised the teacup in front of him and said, If I were there, I would at least want both of his arms. Thank you, Brother Fang, for saving me some face. Uncle, Leah, Fang Yen is not wrong in this matter, Du Qing said with a serious expression. Others might not know, but don't you know? How did I educate them? How did I ask them to? People who bully people should have their heads chopped off in ancient times. Leah was unconvinced, but she could only suppress this anger in her heart. Who asked Uncle Du Qing to stand on his side and speak up for him? Du Qing looked at Chiba Kiru and said, This junior was rude and caused Miss Yi to feel wronged. How about this? Get someone to make a list and I will compensate for all the losses of the tea house. We will also bear the medical expenses and mental damage of the injured staff members. By the way, Miss Yi can rest assured that no one will come looking for trouble in the future. Du Qing took out a name card from his pocket and placed it in front of Chiba Kiru and said, If any blind thieves or scoundrels come looking for trouble, Miss Yi can call this number. My friends in Huaqing will more or less give me some face. Thank you, Mr. Du, for taking care of me. Chiba Kiru is very grateful. Chiba Kiru held the name card with both hands and respectfully bowed to Du Qing to thank him. Although Chiba Kiru had lived in Wuxia for many years, she still retained some traditional Japanese habits. Du Qing waved his hand and said, I am ashamed. Fang Yen and I call each other brother and his students are also my juniors. I should have taken care of you, but I didn't expect you to be hurt like this. This is my fault and I am only making up for some of the losses. I hope you can understand. When the tea house was done with the work, Du Qing looked at Fong Yan and said, Brother Fong, can we have a private talk? No problem. Fong Yan nodded. He turned to look at Chiba Kiru, who was beside him, and asked, Is there a quiet place here? Chiba Kiru stood up and said, There is a private room upstairs, I will take you there. There's no need. We can go there by ourselves, Fong Yan said and waved his hand. Don't worry, we won't get lost. Chiba Kiru covered her mouth and laughed and said, Mr. Fong is still so humorous. Fong Yan made an inviting gesture and entered the private room on the second floor of the Thousand Leaves Tea House with Du Qing. Leah looked at Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin, then looked at Chiba Kiru, who was making tea gently, and asked, Are you all his students? Yes, the three girls answered at the same time. Pervert. Leah sneered. What kind of teacher would bring the prettiest girl in the class out for tea? Wasn't the answer simple and clear? You are the pervert, Jiang Qin retorted. That's right. One look and I can tell you are not a good person. Mr. Fong is a very good man, don't belittle him like this. Leah felt that she had no chance of winning against the three of them. Chapter 502. The second floor was filled with individual private rooms. They were also constructed with a large amount of wood. The decorations were more exquisite than the ones below, but it didn't seem too complicated. It was as antique as the ones below, which made people feel better for no reason. Fong Yan and Du Qing chose a room near the window and sat down. They didn't even call for the waiter to bring them tea. What do you want? Du Qing looked at Fong Yan sitting opposite him and asked in a low voice. After not seeing him for 3 years, this man's change could be described as heaven and earth. A year ago, Fong Yan was smart, sharp, had a bright smile and a joking attitude. He didn't seem to care about anyone or anything, and he played around in this world with a playful attitude. Some people hated him, but there were also people who liked him from the bottom of their hearts. Because this kind of person didn't look like a bad person at first glance. But now Fong Yan was gloomy and cold. From the way he crushed Du Chun's arm and stabbed the knife into Xiao Hei's ribs, it could be seen that he was also a little cruel. His eyes were still clear, but the occasional flash of sharpness was frightening. His smile was still moving, but when the corners of his mouth curled up slightly and his eyes narrowed slightly, it was enough to frighten people. His heart was vicious and his eyes were murderous. These two temperaments were contradictory to his pure and pure temperament. They were easily highlighted and he couldn't suppress them even if he wanted to. Du Qing knew what Fong Yan had experienced and he also understood why he had such a change. The hatred of killing one's father was absolutely irreconcilable. If someone treated his parents like this, Du Qing guaranteed that he would do it 10 times or 100 times more extreme than Fong Yan. But this kind of change happened to someone else. It was still a little hard to get used to. The current Fong Yan made people afraid and it was hard for people to get close to him like they used to. Emotions were the most hurtful. The saying was indeed true. I want what my eyes can see, Fong Yan said. Du Qing was stunned. What could his eyes see? Is this statement in a broad sense or a narrow sense? Was it a statement of fact or a clever analogy? Was it his current field of vision or the whole of watching? Or an even more distant and vast territory? Du Qing was very frustrated. If he had known this would happen, he would have worked hard to learn Chinese. Otherwise, he would have understood what Fong Yan was talking about. He really didn't like dealing with language teachers. Whether it was in the past or now. At the very least, Du Qing knew that he was looking at him. It was his ability, his intelligence, everything he controlled and possessed. Including warm friendship or unwavering loyalty. Du Qing remained silent for a long time. Fong Yan was not in a hurry. He sat in front of the window and watched the people coming and going on the street below. Everyone had a different expression on their faces and everyone's eyes were filled with worries. He was not the only one who was tired. Everyone's life was not easy. When Fong Yan was deep in thought, Du Qing suddenly asked, "What can you give me?" Fong Yan's crossed fingers loosened a little. Du Qing saw this scene and thought to himself, he's still a young man after all. He didn't know why, but seeing this scene made Du Qing feel a lot more comfortable, and the wariness in his heart also decreased a lot. An invulnerable person was the scariest. Everyone should have their own weakness. Only those with weaknesses were worthy of being close to. It was just that most people didn't understand this. I'll give you more glory, Fang Yan said with a smile. What you urgently need now and what you can't imagine. Fang Yan and Du Qing didn't let everyone wait for too long. In less than 10 minutes, the two of them came out one after another. Both of them had warm smiles on their faces, indicating that they were chatting happily upstairs. Du Qing and Fang Yan shook hands again and sincerely invited, "Brother Fang, I've specially left some cakes and some good tea. You must come to my place when you have time. I'll definitely bother you." Fang Yan nodded and agreed. Du Qing then shook hands with Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin to bid farewell. As he held Yuan Lin's hand, he said, "Your uncle and I are considered old friends. Please send my regards to him when you have the chance. He's elusive and it's not easy to find him for a cup of tea." "I will." Yuan Lin nodded and agreed with a sweet smile. Du Qing shook hands with Chiba Kori and said, "Miss Yi, I'm really sorry. Your father is a martial artist that I respect very much. I won't let his most beloved daughter experience something like this again. As long as you don't leave Huaqing, I'll ensure your safety. If anyone dares to bully you again, I'll repay them 100 times over." "Thank you, Mr. Du." Chiba Kori bowed deeply to Du Qing. Although she didn't know what Mr. Fang and Du Qing were talking about upstairs, the fact that Du Qing said something like that after coming downstairs proved that he was indeed expressing his attitude. Du Qing patted Li Ye's shoulder and said, "Let's go. We won't disturb their reunion." Li Ye followed behind Du Qing and walked out of the door. She had no interest or mood to greet anyone. A great teacher produces a great disciple, and an evil teacher produces an evil disciple. After Li Ye got on the car, she immediately poured out her dissatisfaction and said, "Uncle, do we need to give that Fang Yan so much face? Who does he think he is? He's so arrogant. He hit our people and he still has the face to ask us to come and see him? We should indeed come and see him. Wouldn't it be better to bring a few dozen people to see him?" Du Qing glanced at Li Ye and said earnestly, "Do you think you can make Fang Yan stay just because you brought a few dozen people? Do you think he's a god? A few dozen people can't make him stay. If a few dozen people can't make him stay, then we'll bring 300 to 500 people. We have a lot of people anyway," Li Ye said unhappily. Du Qing shook his head lightly and said, "Even 300 to 500 people can't make him stay." Du Qing held Li Ye's hand and said with a serious expression, "Xiaoye, Fang Yan is not from the same world as us. This kind of person either be friends or never get to know each other, never be enemies. It's too dangerous, it's hard to defend against." "Uncle, who is he?" "Inner martial world." "Is there really a martial world? What is the martial world? And what is the inner river lake?" Li Ye kept asking like a curious baby. "It's too complicated and dangerous inside. It's best if you don't ask too much," Du Qing said. Although Li Ye was full of questions, she couldn't do anything if her uncle didn't say anything. The current Fang Yan is no longer the Fang Yan of the past. Du Qing sighed and said, "That's right. In the past I thought he was cheeky and not too annoying. But now he's simply an egomaniac." "He's not an egomaniac," Du Qing said. "He really is. He has the capital to be arrogant. Rosefinch Secondary's teacher? He has a grandfather who's a prime minister in the academic world?" Du Qing shook his head and said, "Fang Yan left Huaqing for 3 years, so you stopped paying attention to him. Or perhaps you've never paid attention to such a man. The current Huaqing is a huge coliseum. There are 2 top-notch experts engaged in a bloody battle. One of them is Yanjing General Family's Jiang Junling." "Jiang Junling from Jiang Junling?" Li Ye was shocked. "The other person is Fang Yan," Du Qing said. "Fang Yan? What gives him the right?" Li Ye asked in disbelief. It was not only Li Ye, this kind of news would be shocking to anyone. One was a school teacher, and the other was the future heir to Yanjing's richest family. Their status, wealth, resources, and connections were all unequal. It was like a battle between an ant and a giant elephant. How could an ant make a giant elephant tumble? Because he's Fang Yan of the inner society, because he's the major shareholder of Chaoyan Technology, because he owns 30% of Longtu Group's shares, because the 4 prodigies of Huaqing are under his tail, because Lanshan Valley was forced out of the family because of him. It's unknown whether Qiang Long Tan is dead or alive, but he might have died in his hands. Because of him, Jiang Fengxing was abandoned by his family and became a wandering soul in the sea. Longtu Group was torn apart and Jiang Junling was forced to bow down to him by the power he created and was bitten by him. This is Fang Yan, the young man you met just now. Tell me what gives him the right. Leah was deeply shocked, her eyes widened and her mouth slightly opened. After being stunned for a long time, she cursed without a care for her image and said, F***C, is this guy a pervert? He's so skilled, has such a powerful background, and his wealth is dozens of times more than ours. He didn't want to be a successful person in society but went to be a school teacher. Is he crazy? Crazy. Du Qing smiled bitterly and said, Silly child, I don't know if he's a pervert or crazy, but if we want to be enemies with him then we're all perverts and crazy. Du Chun, this idiot. Leah scolded angrily. Of all people he could have provoked, why did he have to provoke Fong Yan? This time he kicked an iron plate and one of his arms is gone. Can it really not be fixed? If it really can't be fixed, we can send it abroad to have a look. Du Qing's eyes became fierce like an enraged old leopard, his voice cold and murderous as he said, I originally thought that since this matter has nothing to do with us, we'll be impartial and not offend anyone, but there are people who want to use us as a good card. They borrowed my hand, Du Qing, are they not afraid that I'll cut off the arm they stretched out? Leah was shocked. She looked at Du Qing with a face full of shock and asked, Uncle, you mean, go to the hospital? Du Qing said in a low voice. Chapter 503. Qinghong Hospital was one of Du Qing's businesses. When Du Qing and Leah rushed to Qinghong Hospital, Du Chun's body had already been examined and he was preparing to make the next step. When Li Dawei, the dean of Qinghong Hospital, heard that Boss Du had arrived, he quickly brought the experts to welcome him. Du Qing shook hands with Dean Li Dawei and asked, What's the result? There's no danger to his life, but the condition of his arm is not optimistic. Li Dawei's expression was serious, as if he was as sad as all of you. He said, I don't know what kind of attack he suffered, but the bones in his right arm have already been shattered. I asked young Master Du and he said that he was only grabbed by the wrist. If it was only grabbed by the wrist, it would not have been possible to bring about such a degree of injury. To Li Dawei, the situation he encountered was against science. A normal person grabbed your wrist and the bones in your entire arm were shattered. Was this a myth? Therefore he believed that there were other secrets to this. Du Qing glanced at Leah, making her realize how terrifying Fong Yan was. He knew that this kind of situation did exist. Is there any possibility of curing Qinghong? Du Qing asked. Li Dawei shook his head and said, When young Master Du just sent it over, I gathered the orthopedic experts from the hospital to diagnose it. After the examination report came out, we immediately held a meeting. Everyone's views were not optimistic and the only conclusion they came to was amputation. Dean Li, is there really no other way? Leah asked anxiously. A perfectly fine person's arm was amputated. No one would be able to bear such a consequence. Miss Li, we've really tried our best. Li Dawei said. If we can't solve it here, what about abroad? But is there any possibility of curing it? Leah asked. Li Dawei shook his head and said, The hope is very slim because his bones are not broken but shattered. If it's broken, we can repair it. A pile of shattered bones, whether it's at home or abroad, I'm afraid there's no mature treatment plan. We can also send the examination report to a few cooperating hospitals abroad to see their feedback. Du Qing nodded and said, Do your best. We will. Li Dawei said as if he was promising. Du Chun was lying in the hospital's advanced ward. Because he had just been injected with painkillers, he had already closed his eyes and entered a deep sleep. However, his drowsiness was too shallow. When he heard the door open, he immediately opened his eyes and looked over. His face was pale, his hair was messy, and his eyes were bloodshot. Du Chun, who had always liked to dress in a British style, had fallen into such a haggard state in such a short period of time. He was about to face an even more difficult choice. Fate was really amazing. Uncle. Du Chun called out. His voice was dry and there was no moisture in his mouth. Du Chun. Leah ran to Du Chun's bedside. Seeing his unbearable pain, her eyes reddened once again and she said, Du Chun, how do you feel now? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? I'm fine. Du Chun's eyes were filled with bone-deep hatred as he said, That Fong Yan is too vicious. How do you know his name is Fong Yan? Du Qing looked at Du Chun expressionlessly and asked aloud. Uncle, Leah's face also froze. Yeah, how did Du Chun know that the person who cut off his arm was called Fong Yan? Or did he send someone to inquire about it after the incident? With his injuries like this, he still had the mood to ask someone to inquire about the origins of the culprit? If someone went to inquire about it after the incident, would the news have spread so quickly? The greater possibility was that Du Chun knew that the person was Fang Yen a long time ago, but he still went over recklessly, he said it himself. Du Chun's eyes were flustered as he said, when he beat someone up he said his name was Fang Yen. Du Chun, if you still want to lie to me at this time, I will turn around and leave. I will no longer care about your matters. Your life and death has nothing to do with me. Du Qing said sternly. Uncle, I was wrong. Du Chun struggled to get up, but was pressed down by Du Qing and Li Ya. Du Qing patted Du Chun's shoulder and said, Du Chun, you're still young and sometimes you don't know what's important. But now you must tell me what happened. This is very important to us. Du Chun nodded his head and said, about a week ago, Zhang Lin and Zhang Jiming came to find me and asked me to arrange a place to discuss some cooperation. I told them to go to my bar and they said that they had drunk too much recently, and now they felt like vomiting when they saw alcohol. Then they took me to a tea house called Thousand Leaves near the bar. At that time I saw Chiba Keru and thought that this woman was very beautiful. So they encouraged you to pursue her, didn't they? Du Qing asked. Yes, they said that this was a fairyland on earth and that such a beauty could not be missed. They also said that I would definitely not succeed. I was not convinced, so I made a bet with them saying that I would be able to take this woman down within a month. Du Qing looked at Li Ya, meaning to say, do you think I guessed wrong? Li Ya was both angry and annoyed. She slapped Du Chun's head and scolded, Du Chun, you idiot. Have you never seen a woman in your life? They clearly treat you as a fool and set up a trap waiting for you to jump into it. You're really not polite at all. Such a beautiful woman with the Zhang brothers' moral character, why don't they do it themselves? Why did they have to think of a way to provoke you? Du Chun was shocked and said, they deliberately tricked me. At that time they also said that they wanted to make a move, but I said that I was the first to discover it, so I had to pay attention to first come, first served. So you went to harass the Thousand Leaves tea house again and again? To pester Chiba Keru? Li Ya asked. Since the bet has already been made, I can't give up halfway. Furthermore, I've already boasted to them that if I can't even deal with a little curator of a tea house, I'll lose too much face in front of my friends. Li Ya laughed coldly again and said, so in order to not lose face in front of your friends, you would rather lose an arm. Du Chun's mood became irritable and said, I didn't expect it either. I didn't expect it to end like this. I've already bribed the staff of the tea house. She will inform me at any time. I didn't expect him to be so vicious. I thought the people I brought would be enough to make him suffer. You just said, the staff member who tipped you off was the woman you kicked and beat. Du Qing asked. How do you know? Du Chun asked in surprise. What was she doing when you came in? She was playing the zither with someone. Du Chun said. There are so many waiters in the tea house and she is playing the zither with someone. Are you talking about the zither in the corner? Du Chun nodded and corrected, yes, it's the zither. The zither is in the corner, and you are sitting on the big round table at the entrance of the tea house. Don't ask me how I know because I saw blood on the floor of that table. In other words, you and that girl are sitting at the innermost part of the tea house, and the other is sitting at the outermost part of the tea house. Are there any other waiters between the two of you? Yes. There should be. Du Chun asked uncertainly. He wasn't a detail-oriented person. He just wanted to pick up a girl, so why would he need to pay attention to these things? Even if he did, he wouldn't care at all. They were just some insignificant people. What kind of storm could they cause? Don't you think it's strange? That girl was clearly playing the zither with someone, but when she saw you coming, she immediately came up to receive you. Furthermore, there are other staff members among you. This isn't the first time you've been to the Thousand Leaves tea house. And today isn't the first time you've lost your temper, right? Logically speaking, the staff of the tea house all know what kind of person you are. You brought a large group of people over to cause trouble, and as long as it was a normal person, they would deliberately avoid you and not want to get close to you. But she was the exact opposite. Not only was she not afraid, she even ran past the other staff members to receive them. Isn't this enough to make people suspicious? Du Chun was so shocked that he couldn't say a word. Being with his uncle constantly reminded him that he was actually a 100% idiot. There was no substance in the middle. Li Ya finally understood the cause and effect of the problem. She looked at Du Qing in shock and said, So Fang Yan already knew that Du Chun and the staff member who was beaten up were acting. When he saw Du Chun make a move, he was unwilling to make a move, and instead sat there quietly waiting. With his ability, if he was willing to make a move, how could Du Chun have the chance to hurt him? Du Qing said. Is he really that smart? Little Ya, Fang Yan is definitely the smartest person I've ever met. He's also the most vicious person. I'll remind you again, don't be careless. Du Qing's expression was more serious than ever. Do you think that Fang Yan crushed Du Chun's hand because he had already beaten up a staff member who he already knew was in cahoots with Du Chun? Do you think he made such a big commotion just to vent his anger for his student? He is warning Du Chun, warning me, warning us that there might be a mastermind behind us. I haven't seen him for 3 years, he doesn't know what happened, and he doesn't know if my choice and our power are still neutral. He's worried that I've already been roped in by someone, so he purposely let Du Chun do this, so he got someone to call me and ask me to meet him at the tea house. These words caused Leah to sweat profusely. She did not expect that there would be so much inside information hidden within. Compared to these people, Leah felt that her IQ was not enough. She swore in her heart that if anyone praised her for being smart again in the future, she would definitely pull out his tongue in anger. This was an insult. All the detail-oriented people in the world are bastards. Leah roared and cursed in her heart. After thinking for a while, he added, except for Uncle Du Qing. Chapter 504. Leah put away her pride and hatred towards Fang Yan and said, so when I stubbornly wanted to come to the hospital to visit Du Chun, you rushed to the Thousand Leaves tea house? Some misunderstandings are better solved earlier than later. Du Qing said, if we were late or if we didn't go, I'm sure Fang Yan would have made a move on us by now, right? What could be more important than this? Du Qing looked at Du Chun and said, why can't you understand a situation full of flaws? Brother Zhonglin didn't come earlier or later, but at this time 3 years later, don't I find it strange? Fang Yan had only returned to Huaqing for a few days, and those people had already sent you to him. Chiba Kori's father was the head of the Chiba military department. He was the sword god worshipped by the Japanese martial artists. He was a real god. If the news of his daughter being bullied in Wuxia spreads, Du Chun, how many heads do you think you have for them to chop off? Even if Fang Yan doesn't do anything, he only needs to pass this news to the Japanese. Du Chun, do you think our days will be peaceful in the future? What do you think those crazy Japanese swordsmen, what will they do? 100,000 men of sacrifice going to Wuxia, don't you think it's spectacular? Thinking of the suicidal attacks of the Japanese soldiers, Leah and Du Chun's heart sank. It was too dangerous, too scary, too deadly. Who are these people? What were these people's hearts made of? With a casual move, they pushed people into a pit of fire. No, it wasn't just a pit of fire. This was a mountain of knives, a sea of swords, and the 18 levels of hell. In the past, Leah scoffed at the saying that a certain person could do anything with a flip of his hand. After this incident, she finally believed that there were people who could reach such a level. Fang Yan was like that, Du Qing was like that, and the person behind all of this was like that. With a glance or a move, they could bring people to heaven and send them to hell. They were all devils. Yes, complete and utter devils. If possible, Leah would never want to interact with such a person in her entire life. Uncle, I don't understand. Why did those people target us? Why did they push us to the opposite side of Fang Yan? Leah asked in confusion. Because of those buckets of water, Du Qing said bitterly. If they want to play chess with Fang Yan and want to win the game, then they will have to play chess with him. Of course, we have to do a detailed investigation on Fang Yan and the people around Fang Yan. We send water to Fang Yan's grandfather Lu Gong every month, so they will naturally suspect that we have a close relationship with Fang Yan. 3 years ago, Lu Gong brought Fang Yan to visit Du Qing. Or rather, he was looking for trouble. In the end, Du Qing cleverly resolved it. Not only did he appease Elder Lu's anger, but he also managed to obtain one of Elder Lu's paintings with the help of Fang Yan. In order to thank Lu Gong for giving him the ink, Du Qing would visit Lu Gong's house every New Year's Day and other festivals. And the water that Hu Puquan brought back was 4 times a month, and it had not stopped for 3 years. Those people who had grasped the situation would naturally suspect the relationship between Du Qing and Fang Yan. They would even mistakenly believe that the reason why Fang Yan was able to find Jiang Longtan and Jiang Fingxing's ships so smoothly in the vast sea was because of the Qing gang. Du Qing had such a background and he had countless open and hidden connections with all sorts of people. Such a person was naturally extremely dangerous to them. So they want to remove us, the chess piece? Leah asked. They are just testing us. Du Qing said. They pushed Du Chun out to test us. If our two families fight, they will naturally take us in with a smile and use us. If our two families are safe, it proves that we and Fang Yan are indeed as close as they see. Then their real killing move is about to come. What kind of killing move? They will personally spread the news of Du Chun bullying Chiba Kori to the East Ocean. Leah really wanted to cry now. Why were those people so bad? How could they bully people like this? Did honest people deserve to be bullied by smart people like you? Uncle, what should we do now? Du Chun's already pale face became even paler. He didn't think, and it was impossible for him to think, that just going to a tea house with a friend for a cup of tea, seeing a beautiful girl and making a bet, how could it bring about such a huge impact? How could it push him and his uncle into a desperate situation? Build an alliance with Fang Yan, and work hard to get Chiba Kori's forgiveness. Du Qing said firmly. That's what I rushed to the tea house to do. We've already formed an alliance with Fang Yan? Is there a better choice? Du Qing smiled bitterly. Is it better for us to face those crazy death warriors alone, or is it better for us to face them together with Fang Yan? Chiba Kori is Fang Yan's student, and it seems like they have a good relationship. Why would Fang Yan help us? Because it was the Fang family who killed Chiba Kori's father. Du Qing said in a heavy voice. No matter what the reason is, the East Ocean people will put this hatred on Fang Yan. Fang Yan is their longtime enemy. So he doesn't care how many East Ocean swordsmen he offends. We were born to work together. When he asked to meet, I had no reason to refuse. It was Li Ya's first time hearing so many secrets, and she found it hard to digest. Chiba Kori is Fang Yan's student, and Fang Yan's family killed Chiba Kori's father? But why does it seem like they have a good relationship? She said one bad thing about Fang Yan and 3 women attacked her, including the woman who killed her father, Chiba Kori. It didn't seem like there was any deep hatred between them. What kind of strange world is this? No matter how we deal with this, we're the biggest losers. Du Qing's face was covered with a layer of haze as he said, Fang Yan lost, but he won our full support. We lost, and not only did we have to choose a side, but we also have to face unpredictable risks. The people behind all this, they're the biggest winners. With just a flick of their fingers, they pushed Fang Yan to the front of countless Japanese warriors of sacrifice once again. They put us in a difficult situation, and we might face a destructive attack. The mastermind, the man who played chess with Fang Yan? Leah asked through gritted teeth. Du Qing didn't answer Leah's question, but looked at Du Chun and sighed softly, saying, Take this arm as a lesson. After you recover, go back home and don't come back for 3 years. Uncle, my business. Leave your business to Leah to manage, and all the income will be transferred to your account. What? You still don't trust Leah? Uncle, I don't want to go back home. Let me stay in Huaqing. I promise I won't cause any more trouble. If you don't cause trouble, trouble will cause trouble for you. Du Qing sighed softly and said, Put me on the fire to roast under my butt, and also put you guys on the fire to roast. Uncle, it's decided, Du Qing said with a strong attitude. Little Ya also reduced the number of times she goes out, and try to let her subordinates handle the matters under her jurisdiction. He knew better than anyone that the future Huaqing would be a reshuffled Huaqing. The Jiang family might be eliminated, but it might rise again. The Lan family would split, and would the old die or the new be established? The Mei family would remain independent, but could they always refuse to get involved? And the Lu family, would they really follow Fang Yan sincerely? Or was it just Lu Shu's decision? As for the other observers, who would they place their bets on? Since he had formed an alliance with Fang Yan, he could only do his best to help Fang Yan achieve the final victory. Fang Yan, would he really not disappoint? After working hard in society for decades, Du Qing started to feel that he couldn't see the situation clearly. I understand, Li Yo agreed. After knowing how cunning those people were and also understood how strong they were, she couldn't even think of fighting them. This world still belonged to smart people. I'm going back to the countryside to farm. Du Chun knew that he couldn't hold on any longer, so he could only accept his uncle's arrangement. Du Qing patted Du Chun's head and said, Your hand might not be able to keep it, be mentally prepared. Du Qing turned around and left, while Li Ye stayed behind to take care of Du Chun. Sis, I really can't keep my hand? Du Chun asked sorrowfully. Li Ye nodded and said, finally your life is saved. Du Chun, you really got into big trouble this time. The tea was already in its third brew and it wouldn't taste too good if it continued. Instead it would ruin the beauty left behind. Fang Yan looked at Chiba Sun and said, it's good to see that you're fine. Since we found a place today we might come here often to drink tea in the future. We'll be leaving first, the two of them still have to catch a flight later. Chiba Sun immediately stood up and bowed deeply to Fang Yan saying, thank you Mr. Fang. If you hadn't appeared in time today the Chiba tea house might have been destroyed by them. It started because of me, why are you thanking me? Fang Yan shook his head and said, I was the one who brought you trouble. But don't worry, something like this won't happen again. You have to be careful too. If you encounter anything that you can't solve, you can call Mr. Du or contact me anytime. As Fang Yan spoke he took out his phone from his pocket and handed it over saying, save your number. Chiba Sun's eyes were filled with doubt but she quickly understood. She shouldn't think about things that she couldn't understand, let nature take its course and follow her heart. Chiba Sun didn't reject Fang Yan's good intentions. She took Fang Yan's phone and saved his number then dialed her own number. If there are any Japanese friends who came from afar, please send my regards to them, Fang Yan said. He turned around and walked outside. Mr. Fang, Chiba Sun shouted. Fang Yan turned around. This isn't fair to you, Chiba Sun said. Is there anything fair in this world? Fang Yan smiled and said, don't ask that injured employee to come back to work anymore. Chiba Sun's eyes instantly became clear, and there was an unconcealable anger on her face. Chapter 505. Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin didn't understand what they were talking about, but they knew it must be very bad. Because they found that Fang Yan's eyes were very lonely and his smile was very bitter. Mr. Fang, are you okay? Jiang Qin asked with concern. I'm fine. Fang Yan smiled and shook his head. Am I not fine? It's good that you're fine, Yuan Lin said. They were worried but Fang Yan didn't want to tell them the truth and they didn't know how to comfort him. Fang Yan invited them to lunch but the two girls refused. They got up in the morning and ate a lot of desserts in the hotel restaurant. Now they couldn't eat anything. Fang Yan sent them to the hotel door, and then the two girls went back to their room to pack their luggage. They were going to the airport in a while. After Jiang Qin got out of the car he rushed up and hugged Fang Yan. He said, Mr. Fang, be happy forever. After that he turned and ran toward the magnificent hotel lobby. Yuan Lin opened her arms to Fang Yan and said, I want one too. Fang Yan hugged Yuan Lin and said, you two should be careful. Mr. Fang, don't worry. We will take good care of ourselves, Yuan Lin promised. When the two girls' figures disappeared, Fang Yan drove the car away. The phone in his pocket rang. Fang Yan glanced at the caller ID. It was Lu Chaoga. Fang Yan answered the phone and asked with a smile, what's the matter? Are you coming back for lunch? Lu Chaoga asked. I'm on my way back, Fang Yan said. It was lunchtime now and there was nothing to do back at school. It was better to go back and make lunch for Lu Chaoga. I see, Lu Chaoga said. After hanging up, Fang Yan was slightly stunned and then put his phone away. When Fang Yan returned to Lu Chaoga's villa, Lu Chaoga was in the kitchen cutting vegetables for cooking. Fang Yan said that he was on his way home so she prepared lunch at home. Fang Yan was shocked and hurriedly said, your hand hasn't recovered yet, you can't get wet. As he spoke he tried to grab the knife in Lu Chaoga's hand. Lu Chaoga turned around and said with a smile, it's not that precious, nothing will happen. Ah, Lu Chaoga exclaimed in a low voice. When she turned around the knife in her hand did not stop and she accidentally cut a wound on her hand. Fang Yan hurriedly walked over and took the kitchen knife away from her hand. Looking at the blood flowing out of her finger, he frowned slightly and put her finger in his mouth. Lu Chaoga did not expect Fang Yan to react like this. Her body was stiff and her cheeks were as red as a ripe tomato. A stream of sweet blood flowed into his mouth and Fang Yan swallowed it. He took out Lu Chaoga's finger, looked at Lu Chaoga and said, it's a small cut, it's not deep. Wait in the living room, I'll get some ointment for you. Okay, Lu Chaoga lowered her head and replied. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. It was very surprising that a professional queen who was so energetic at work was so timid and weak when it came to relationships. Fang Yan quickly found the golden chrysalis muscle nourishing powder that he had not used before. He applied a layer of it to the wound on Lu Chaoga's finger, and then used gauze to bandage the injured finger. After tying a beautiful bow, Fang Yan looked up at Lu Chaoga's pretty face and said, "The wound on your palm is not completely healed. This hand must not touch water. If your palm gets inflamed a second time, even the golden chrysalis muscle-nourishing powder can't help you." "I know. I used my other hand to wash the vegetables," Lu Chaoga explained. "Then you have to use both hands when you cut the vegetables, right? What if the water stains on the vegetables or the knife get on your hands?" Fang Yan said angrily. He put away the ointment, removed the apron from Lu Chaoga's neck and walked toward the kitchen. He said, "Tell me what you want to eat, I'll make it." Fang Yan walked into the kitchen and realized that Lu Chaoga had prepared all the dishes that she liked to eat. There was not a single dish that she liked to eat. Fang Yan glanced at Lu Chaoga, took the cleaver and continued cutting the vegetables. Lu Chaoga walked in and saw Fang Yan's nimble and skillful knife skills. She said embarrassedly, "I thought I could do it too, but I didn't expect my cutting skills to be worse than yours. I've been playing with knives since I was young and I've practiced for many years. How can you beat me?" Fang Yan said with a smile. "I met Chiba Kori today." Fang Yan recounted the entire incident and said, "I accidentally lost a match." "It's not really a loss." Lu Chaoga gave a fair evaluation. "Being able to get Du Qing's help is a great reward. Du Qing is an extremely smart person. He hasn't shown himself in recent years, but his influence has been growing. With his help, it's easier for us to grasp all kinds of information in Huaqing. We're too weak when it comes to intelligence. We still lost." Fang Yan sighed. "Chiba Kori died in battle and the East Asians are filled with hatred. I've been in Swallow Dock for 3 years and the East Asians have finally shifted their attention. Now that he's pushing me out again, pushing me in front of the East Asians, there'll be some unnecessary trouble. Moreover, Du Qing and the others are in an even more dangerous situation. They enjoy the help of others, but they also have to bear the responsibility of protecting others. Now that we've allied with Du Qing's troubles are also our troubles. Du Qing isn't weak. As long as he doesn't leave Huaqing, he's more than capable of protecting himself." Lu Chaoga crossed her arms and pondered. "It's just that his opponent is too scary. He can make us so miserable with just one move. This time his evil plan succeeded. What more dangerous methods will he use next time?" "The enemy is in the dark and we're in the light. It's really hard to guard against." Fang Yan sneered and said, "Who said the enemy is in the dark and we're in the light? They're the same as us in the light, at least from today onwards. As long as he's still in Huaqing, as long as he hasn't left, their whereabouts will definitely be under our eyes. Du Qing isn't someone to be trifled with. He's suffered such a big loss today, so he'll naturally think of a way to get justice for his nephew. I believe in his ability and wisdom. We still have to be careful." Lu Chaoga stood behind Fang Yan and watched him hunch his back slightly while cutting vegetables. Her heart was full of pity and heartache. This young man, the opponent he faced, was too strong, and the burden he had to bear was too heavy. She really wanted to press her body against him, to reach out and hug him tightly in her arms. She felt her breathing quicken and she felt her heartbeat quicken. Her body's fragrance secreted more and more, and there was even a thin layer of sweat flowing out. She was wet. The t-shirt under the jacket and the underwear underneath were all soaked with nervous sweat. But she just didn't have the courage to take that step. "I'm really a timid woman," Lu Chaoga thought in her heart in annoyance. Fang Yan sensed Lu Chaoga's abnormality behind him, and his movements of cutting vegetables slowed down, but he didn't turn around in the end. A pile of dry firewood, a raging fire. As long as anyone took the initiative, as long as a spark flew out, it would start a prairie fire, and once it started it would be unstoppable. Fang Yan finished cutting the vegetables and said, "I'm going to cook. Go to the living room and watch TV for a while so that the smoke doesn't get on you." Lu Chaoga's voice trembled slightly as she said. She quickly left the kitchen and walked towards the living room. Deep love doesn't last long. Fang Yan's hands and feet were deft, and he quickly prepared a table of sumptuous dishes. Lu Chaoga had the habit of taking a nap. After lunch, Lu Chaoga went upstairs to rest and Fang Yan cleaned up the dishes. After finishing the work at home, Fang Yan sat on the sofa for a while in a daze, but he still decided to drive to school. There was only Baldy on duty in the security booth. Fang Yan asked where the others went. Baldy said that the freshmen were in military training, and the others were patrolling the school's big field to prevent students from fainting from heatstroke or other emergencies. Fang Yan filled his teacup with tea and said, "If that's the case, then I'll go to the field." Go. Baldy said with a smile. "Since you took care of those gangsters, no gangsters dared to come to our school to cause trouble. It's safe here and nothing will happen." Although Fang Yan was no longer a teacher, he also knew that Rosefinch Secondary recruited 16 classes this year, and each class had 45 students. It couldn't be helped. As the reputation of Rosefinch Senior High School became more and more prominent, more and more parents wanted to send their children here to study. Moreover, in order to achieve this goal, they really didn't care about the cost. If it wasn't for Zhong Dei's strict control and stubbornly guarding the academic performance, Rosefinch would have recruited 100 classes. No matter how poor they were, they couldn't be poor in education. No matter how hard it was, they couldn't let their children suffer. The old man's words were the most thoroughly implemented in this society. Each class had a square formation and 16 classes meant 16 square formations. Of course, during military training, boys and girls still had to be separated. Because of the difference in physical fitness, the training intensity was also different. The facilities of Rosefinch Secondary were still very good. There were 2 standard football fields, plus more than a dozen basketball courts, which was enough to accommodate the freshmen and the military training instructors transferred from the surrounding armed police force. The afternoon sun was very hot and it burned people's faces. Fang Yan wasn't afraid of the sun, but he didn't like it to tan him, so he deliberately walked under the shade of the trees. "Why aren't you in military training? Which class are you in?" A rough voice shouted at Fang Yan. Chapter 506. In order to avoid military training, the students used all kinds of skills and means. Some people asked for period leave, some asked for sick leave, and some said that their parents suddenly passed away. In fact, their grandmother had passed away several years ago. Some people fainted while standing and some people ran away while practicing. Therefore, the military training instructors and counselors of each class took turns to closely monitor the students to prevent any fish from escaping the net. It was time for military training. The young guy, Fang Yan, appeared in the shade of the trees next to the school. The nearby drill instructor saw him and thought that he was a student who couldn't stand the hardship and was ready to escape, so he shouted at him from a distance. Fang Yan looked around and made sure that there were no other students who skipped class around him. Then he said, "I'm not a student. I'm the school's security guard." Ha ha. There was a roar of laughter from the students. The laughter was crisp and clear. It was a group of girls. The drill instructor looked at Fang Yan and shouted, "Why aren't you wearing a security uniform? Come here and take 2 steps. I want to see if you are a real security guard or a fake security guard, a real Likue or a fake Likue." Fang Yan had no choice but to walk toward the military training group with a teacup in his hand. The students were wearing military green uniforms and green hats. From a distance, it was hard to tell whether they were men or women. Looking closely, he found that all the students looked the same. Didn't someone say it on the internet? A girl who could stand out from the rest of the military training team was a true beauty. Every freshman season, there would be a lot of photos of beautiful girls on the internet. Of course, many of them were deliberately hyped up. Fang Yan really found a girl who stood out. It was Su Qi who was standing in the first row of this group. Su Qi saw Fang Yan and greeted Fang Yan happily. She said, "Mr. Fang, why are you here?" "Mr. Fang?" Everyone looked at Fang Yan with puzzled eyes. Is this guy really a teacher? Didn't he say he was a security guard? Moreover, Su Qi actually knew this guy. Beautiful women always attracted more attention. Even though it had only been a few days since school started, Su Qi was already quite popular among the students of Rosefinch Secondary. The number 1 beauty of the new students, the number 1 beauty of Rosefinch, and countless other titles were superimposed on her. Every day there were countless boys who came to the phalanx or went to the classroom to peep at her. Whether it was the boys or the girls or the teachers and instructors, they all knew of Su Qi's existence. Now that Su Qi took the initiative to greet a small security guard, it was indeed surprising. Fang Yan originally wanted to take a look from afar. He didn't want to get close to that team or provoke anything. He had long since realized that he had a mocking face and anyone who saw it would want to slap him a few times. But now that Su Qi had taken the initiative to greet him, It would be rude of him not to respond. Therefore Fang Yan smiled at Su Qi and said, "I'm just walking around." Su Qi's next words pushed Fang Yan to the heart of the storm. She smiled sweetly, and the military uniform and the green hat that didn't fit Fang Yan's aesthetic standards couldn't hide her flowery smile. She said to Fang Yan, "Mr. Fang, wait for me for a moment. Our moral principles are almost over. I'll treat you to a Coke later." Well, everyone was shocked. Su Qi actually took the initiative to invite a small security guard to a Coke? And she made it very clear that it was her treat. Wasn't this a public invitation? Su Qi, what's the relationship between you two? Su Qi, don't tell me you like this small security guard? Oh my god, the campus belle Rosefinch and the security guard Rosefinch. Why does this combination seem so incompatible? Cheese the students discussed animatedly, and the girl standing next to Su Qi directly asked Su Qi boldly. Nowadays high school students didn't know what it meant to be shy and affectionate words were hanging on their lips. Fang Yan was stunned for a moment and said, "I still have a lot of things to do. You focus on your military training, don't be distracted." After saying that, Fang Yan wanted to leave this troublesome place. "Wait!" the black-faced instructor shouted. Fang Yan turned to look at the instructor and said with a smile, "Hello, is there something I can help you with? What's your name?" The instructor looked up and down Fang Yan's face and asked. Fang Yan said. "Are you really the security guard of the school?" "Yes." Fang Yan nodded. "I'm often on duty at the school gate. Many students here should have seen me, right?" The instructor sneered and pointed to the black Chinese tunic suit on Fang Yan and said, "It's not the first time I've seen the school's security guards. I'm also very familiar with Captain Kai of your security department, and we've even had a meal together. Everyone else is wearing the school's security uniform. Why are you the only one wearing a Chinese tunic suit? Why? Do you think the security uniform is ugly?" To be honest, Fang Yan did think the security uniform was ugly. Perhaps many of these students who were undergoing military training also felt that the military uniform they were wearing was ugly. However, if he said his true thoughts in public, it would be too offensive. It was not conducive to unity. Fang Yan laughed and said, "I don't think the security uniform is ugly. It's just that the clothes have just been washed and there are no other clothes to change into. So I'm wearing a Chinese tunic suit. Do you have a little discipline and the concept of obedience? Do you have a little sense of professional pride?" The black-faced instructor shouted angrily, "If a soldier suddenly found out that he forgot to bring his gun during a battle, can he not shoot? If a soldier found out that his clothes were not dry last night during military training, can he wear it casually? No, absolutely not. If you don't bring your gun, you are not a qualified soldier. If you don't wear the prescribed clothes, you have no organization and no discipline. Everyone else is wearing military uniforms, only you are wearing strange clothes. Are you of the same mind as everyone else? Are you one with this team?" Fang Yan thought about it seriously and said to the black-faced instructor with a guilty face, "Instructor, I'm sorry, this is really my fault." "Of course it's your fault. If it's not your fault, then it's my fault." Seeing Fang Yan apologize, the instructor was even more proud. He straightened his back and said to Fang Yan, "Although you're just a security guard of the school, you're also part of the Rosefinch team. At least you should act like a teacher, right? Do you know what a bad influence you've brought to the students? If all the students I brought wore my own clothes for military training, what would the team look like? Do you have any heroic spirit? Do you have any military demeanor?" Fang Yan felt that he was about to cry. He felt that what the instructor said made sense and he was speechless. So Fang Yan apologized to the instructor again and said, "Instructor, I'm sorry, this is really my fault. I have no organization and no discipline and I dress too independently." Then he said to the students who were in military training, "Students, I'm a bad role model. You must not learn from me. Since it's military training, you should act like a soldier. Don't think that your clothes are ugly, don't think that your hats are an eyesore, don't think that your hats cover your bangs and crush your carefully styled hair. No, a man who bleeds is the most handsome and a woman who sweats is the most beautiful. You have abandoned the beauty of gentleness and have the beauty of toughness that is even rarer." Fang Yan felt that he had stirred up enough. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Students, you continue with your military training. Military training is very necessary. I won't disturb you anymore." The black-faced instructor's face looked better. He even knew how to joke with the students. he said with a smile. Military training is indeed very necessary. It will let the students have profound knowledge and a strong body. In any case, there's no need to stay in school to be a security guard after graduation, right? The girls giggled again as if they had heard a very funny joke. The smile on Fang Yan's face froze. Fang Yan turned to look at the black-faced instructor and said, "As a security guard, I'm not qualified. Because I dress independently, because I work carelessly and even often skip work. But the profession of security guard is equally great. They are as great as the profession of a soldier." The black-faced instructor looked at Fang Yan with a somewhat unfriendly gaze and said, "You think security guards are as great as soldiers? Are you out of your mind?" Fang Yan shook his head and said, "Great people have said that there is no distinction between high and low professions. Why do you think that in your eyes soldiers are greater than security guards? Soldiers are great. They are well organized and well trained. When the country needs them, they will shed their blood to defend the frontier. Soldiers are the backbone of a country. If the backbone is not broken, the country will always be prosperous and healthy. However, security guards also have their own professional characteristics. They get up early every day to guard the school gate and check the clothes of every student, so that they can focus more on their studies and not waste their precious time and energy on some insignificant things. At least for now, it's insignificant for you. If students leave early, they ask about the situation. If students are late, they give a warning. With their existence, students will understand the concept of time better. When you enter society, you will understand how valuable a good habit of punctuality is. If a student encounters a problem, they stand up in time to help. If a student encounters danger, they use their own bodies to block in front of them. Just now the instructor mentioned Captain Kai. Captain Kai has another nickname, Baldy. Perhaps you new students don't know him yet, but you will definitely know him in the future. Because batch after batch of students accidentally dropped their belongings in Sparrow River, it was Baldy and the others who jumped into the water to retrieve them. Some students' keys or mobile phones were thrown into the toilet pit in the toilet. "Wow!" the students exclaimed. "He jumped into the toilet pit?" the girls asked excitedly. "He didn't jump," Fang Yan said. "He was too fat, so he got stuck and couldn't jump." Chapter 507. The girls were full of disdain. What kind of people are they? They thought that Baldy jumped into the cesspit to help the students get their cell phones and keys. Fang Yan looked at them and said, "It doesn't matter whether they jumped or not, and the method of salvage is not important. What's important is that they are selflessly contributing. When you are in need, they stand up. They are on duty during the day to ensure that the students can concentrate on their studies in a quiet and peaceful campus. They are on duty at night because they are worried that something unexpected will happen. In the past, there were often hooligans who came to the school gate to make trouble. Who blocked them outside? There were students with appendicitis at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Who carried them to the hospital? The work of a security guard is inconspicuous, but it also has its shining points. The work of a security guard is trivial and tedious, but it is also essential. Different professions have different nature of the profession. The black-faced instructor sneered and said, "Sure enough, you have an eloquent mouth. That's why you are so popular with girls. Do you think others are idiots?" Although the great man did say that there is no distinction between professions, is the function of a security guard and a soldier the same? The army guards the border and a security guard is just a school. If you dare to say that we are the same as security guards, believe it or not, I will slap you in the face. Not only will I slap you, but my brothers will also slap you. You belittle us as security guards. Are you crazy? The black-faced instructor turned to look at the phalanx of students in front of him and shouted, "Is there anyone who wants to be a soldier when you grow up?" I am willing. I like to be a soldier since I was a child. I think a soldier is very masculine. Instructor, can we marry a soldier when we grow up?" The black-faced instructor glanced at Fang Yan coldly and said, "Is there anyone who wants to be a security guard when you grow up?" The students laughed out loud. This question was too funny. At their age, it was the bravest time to be fearless. They were full of fantasies about life, full of confidence and hope for the future. They wanted to be successful businessmen, world-class scholars, writers, directors, stars, celebrities. At the very least, they wanted to open a flower shop and become a small owner of a coffee shop. Become a security guard? Was the instructor joking? Instructor, this question is very difficult for us to answer. We just felt that security is actually not bad, but we still don't want to be security guards. That's right, who would want to be a security guard? It's so ugly to wear such clothes to patrol every day. I've never thought of finding a boyfriend who's a security guard. If it's a gathering of friends and they ask what your boyfriend does, how are you going to tell them? Fang Yan wasn't angry when the students said that they didn't want to be security guards. When he was this age, he had never thought of becoming a security guard. Fang Yan looked at the students who were laughing and teasing and said with a warm voice, I just want to tell you that it's not easy being a security guard. They were not paid much, but they did a lot of things. Security guards are the same as soldiers and other professions. As long as they don't break the law, don't make mistakes and perform their duties within the scope of their profession, it's still a good job. You said that you want to be a soldier and I support you 1,000,000 times. My best brother became a soldier and fought in the most dangerous places in the country. The black-faced instructor sneered. He didn't believe what Fang Yan said at all. I hope that there will be no war in the country and the world will be peaceful, but this wish is difficult to achieve. Therefore our country needs such warriors, heroes who are willing to risk their lives. I can completely understand that you don't want to be a security guard and don't want to marry a security guard. When I was the same age as you, I wanted to be an assassin waiting for the girl next door to grow up. I wanted to be a close bodyguard for the daughter of a rich man, leveling up and killing monsters all the way to become the son-in-law of their family. I wanted to learn Chinese medicine and become a genius doctor who won the Nobel Prize in medicine. I wanted to act and become the godfather of the entertainment industry. However, when I was young, I didn't want to be a teacher or a security guard. In the end, I chose these two professions and I'm willing to accept it. Because they are quiet, because they don't compete with others. In my current state of mind, I really need to calm myself down. I like this kind of seemingly idle work. So, I sincerely wish you all a greater future and a brighter and more brilliant future. Even geese leave a sound when they pass by and people leave their names when they pass by. I hope your names will be known throughout the world. Clatter. The girls applauded wildly. They were stirred up by Fang Yan's words and their blood was boiling. They felt that Fang Yan understood them and understood their psychology. Everything Fang Yan said was exactly what they were thinking. They were at the best age and felt that they were the best, so they hoped that everything needed to be the best. To be a world-class assassin, to be a close bodyguard for a rich man, to be a doctor who won the Nobel Prize, to be the godfather of the entertainment industry. Wasn't this the Prince Charming of the girls' fantasy? The girls thought that this little security guard was really cute. No wonder the campus belle, Su Chi, took the initiative to invite him to drink Coke. Fang Yan smiled honestly, waved to the students and said, Students, I won't disturb your military training anymore. Goodbye. After that, Fang Yan turned around and was ready to leave. Goodbye. The girls waved to Fang Yan. Hello, Security Fang. What's your phone number? Don't go, we'll treat you to Coke later. Or you can treat us to Coke too. The students tried to persuade him to stay. They felt that talking to this little security guard Fang Yan was much more interesting than military training. With him around for a while, they didn't feel that the sun was scorching above their heads, nor did they feel that their legs were trembling. Time seemed to pass a little faster than usual. Su Chi squinted her eyes at Fang Yan and said aloud, Mr. Fang, what if someone is willing to marry a security guard? Wow. The audience was shocked. Everyone looked at Su Chi with an incredulous expression. Was this girl crazy? If it was just a misunderstanding, everyone thought that Su Chi had some feelings for Fang Yan. Perhaps the two had some relationship in some way and had some interaction. Now she shouted in public that she wanted to marry a security guard. Although she didn't say herself, but everyone knew that wasn't him? Fang Yan staggered and almost fell to the ground. He couldn't answer this question, so Fang Yan prepared to run faster. Shut up, all of you. The black-faced instructor roared. What's with all the noise? Do you still look like a student? Do you still look like a military training student? Are you still in military training or asking for sex? Don't you have any shame? The black-faced instructor pointed at Su Chi and shouted, You step out. Su Chi stepped out. Run 20 laps around the field. You're not allowed to eat until you finish. The students exclaimed. With their physical strength, running 2 or 3 laps was already their limit. If they were asked to run 20 laps, would they still be alive? This was clearly corporal punishment for Su Chi. Su Chi's expression changed and she asked aloud, "Instructor, I want to ask why?" "Because I'm the instructor and because you're a student in military training." The instructor roared at Su Chi with a black face, "Do you hear me? Run immediately. Otherwise you'll have to stand under the sun for as long as you can. That's when you're done." "Instructor, I can't run," Su Chi said. "What? You think you're a girl? You think I can't punish you if you stand there and don't run? Let me tell you, I've seen this kind of trick many times. You're not going to run, right? Fine." The instructor turned to look at the students and roared, "You're a team, a collective. Her mistake is your collective mistake. If she doesn't want to run, then you'll have to stand with her. Cancel the intermission, cancel the dinner. When she starts running, when she finishes running, that's when you can rest and eat." The students screamed even more miserably. Their bodies were already exhausted, and they clenched their teeth and persevered just for the intermission. Now that the intermission and dinner were cancelled, how could they bear it? How was he going to let them live on? Fang Yan couldn't take another step. After a moment of hesitation, he walked back step by step. He walked in front of the instructor and said with a smile, "Instructor, isn't this physical punishment a bit too heavy? They're all girls and their bodies might not be able to bear it. It'll be bad if something happens to them. Neither of us can get away with it, don't you think so?" With Fang Yan's persuasion, the black-faced instructor became even angrier. He shouted at Fang Yan with a stern face, "Are you the instructor or am I the instructor? Are they your soldiers or mine? Are you the only one who knows how to be gentle? Are you the only one who knows how to plead for them? Is this how you pick up female students? How can there be someone like you in Rosefinch Secondary? If I were the school's leader, I'd be the first to fire you." Fang Yan nodded and said, "Some of the students' words are inappropriate, but they don't mean it. How about, instructor, you forgive them this once?" "No." The black-faced instructor refused. "They have to run. This really won't do. It's fine if they don't run." The black-faced instructor looked at Fang Yan and sneered, "If they don't run, you run. Don't you like to be gentle with girls? Don't you like to pretend to be a lover in front of girls? If you're so sorry for them, you should run the 20 laps for them." Fang Yan was stunned for a moment and said with a smile, "Thank you for making an exception, instructor. I'll run for them now." "This guy is sick," the black-faced instructor said mockingly. Chapter 508. This guy was sick and very sick. Running 20 laps around the field was not only unbearable for the girls, but it was also difficult for the boys. In the eyes of the black-faced instructor, Fang Yan's stubbornness in accepting this mission was asking for trouble. In order to please the girls, this little security guard was willing to put down his pride. Not only did he put down his pride, but he also didn't want to live anymore. Most of the security guards were idle people. These people didn't go through systematic training, and they didn't know how to self-recover and self-regulate. Not to mention 20 laps, when he finished 2 laps he would lie on the ground and pretend to be dead. Let's see if the girls would still think he was a likable guy. Idiot. The black-faced instructor cursed in his heart. Fang Yan knew what the black-faced instructor was thinking, but running 20 laps around the field was really not a difficult task for him. Every morning he would wake up for an hour and his training would be 10 times harder than this. Just running laps? Please, our Fang family doesn't have such a simple training method. If the other neighbors of Swallow Dock knew that the Fang family's family training was running laps, they would laugh at them. The Fang family couldn't afford to lose face like this. "Mr. Fang, don't run." When Su Chi heard that Fang Yan was going to take the physical punishment for her, she felt sweet inside, but she couldn't help but worry for Fang Yan. Don't run, I'll just stand." "That's right. Mr. Fang, don't run, right? That's 20 laps. Instructor, you can't run 20 laps, right? Aren't you making things difficult for us?" "Instructor, can you spare us this time? We'll treat you to a cola, okay?" "Shut up." The more these students spoke for Fang Yan, the more uncomfortable the black-faced instructor felt. How could he let a mere security guard ruin his team of students and the girl he liked? He looked at Fang Yan coldly and asked, "What? You're just good at talking? You won't be able to win if you fight?" Fang Yan looked at the instructor and said sincerely, "Mr. Instructor, please don't be hostile to me." "Who's hostile to you? If you want to run, then run. If you don't want to run, then forget it. Did I force you? Did I put a gun to your head and let you run?" The instructor flew into a rage. What he hated the most was being exposed in public. How was he supposed to behave like this? If you don't want to run, then scram. I still have to educate my students. Don't be led astray by the hooligans in school. Fang Yan sighed and said, I'm willing to accept the punishment on their behalf. I'll definitely finish these 20 laps. I just hope that you won't work with your emotions. That will have a bad influence on the students. The black-faced instructor was really annoyed by Fang Yan. He said, I work with emotions? Are you kidding me? You say I work with emotions? Why am I working with emotions? What kind of emotion did I bring to work? You have to make it clear to me today. Fang Yan interrupted the instructor and said, will this matter be settled after I finish the 20 laps? Yes. Fang Yan pointed at Zhou Xian and said, doesn't she need to stand as punishment? No need. Fang Yan then pointed at the students and said, can they go eat too? Yes. The instructor sneered and said, after you finish they can go eat. Fang Yan nodded, turned around and ran toward the field. Mr. Fang. Zhou Xian exclaimed. Fang Yan acted as if he didn't hear anything. His body had already finished running. Zhou Xian, is he really the school's security guard? He looks quite handsome. Zhou Xian, how did you two meet? Do you really like him? He looks gentle and quite manly, but this is 20 laps. Can he last? Zhou Xian didn't answer their questions and didn't know how to answer them. At first glance she felt that this man was very strange. At second glance she felt that this man was very mysterious. At third glance she felt that this man was very charming, a kind of indescribable charm. It was just fate at third glance. She couldn't tell if it was love or like. Besides, did it matter? People interacting with people was a kind of feeling. If they felt good, they would treat you well. If they felt bad, they would treat you badly. If they felt good, they would treat others badly. If they felt bad, they would treat others well. That was asking for trouble. The black-faced instructor glanced at Zhou Xian and raised his voice to all the girls. You are still young. There are a lot of things you don't understand. There are a lot of people who can't see through it. They think that saying a few witty words is humorous and doing a few strange actions is cold. I can tell you responsibly that such a man will not have any future. Impossible, Zhou Xian retorted. You think I'm wrong? The black-faced instructor stared at Zhou Xian and asked. Of course not, Zhou Xian said. What do you think? He is penniless. I can make him rich. He is unknown. I can make him famous. Zhou Xian said. He likes to be a teacher, so I can make him the principal. He likes to be a security guard, so I can make him the security captain. Besides, I think he is more promising than you now. Zhou Xian, how can you talk to the instructor like this? Zhou Xian glanced at the instructor coldly and said, Instructor, do you have to be like this? Teacher Fang Yan just didn't wear the security uniform issued by the school. Even the school didn't say anything to him. But you put one hat after another on him. Think about it carefully. How many times has Mr. Fang apologized to you because of this? You are aggressive and Mr. Fang keeps giving in. You are not considerate and Mr. Fang has to compromise. Why did he do that? It's because he doesn't want to have a conflict with you in front of the students. He wants to protect your dignity and he wants to protect his own dignity. He doesn't want to let the school lose face and let us students see it as a joke. Do you really think that teacher Fang Yan is afraid of you? Why is he afraid of you? Is he afraid of your fist or is he afraid of your power? When you compare with him, it's clear who is better. You still have the nerve to say that he won't be successful in the future? Maybe he's afraid that I'll beat him up. The black-faced instructor sneered and said, This kind of glib-tongued sissy doesn't have any manliness at all. We soldiers hate this kind of man the most. Fortunately, he didn't provoke me just now. Otherwise, I'd have slapped him. What a great prestige. Zhou Xian sneered. The school invited us to come here to train your physique and cultivate your brave heart. Is this brave heart? Is it bullying people with martial arts? Hee, if a soldier doesn't have some martial arts, what kind of soldier can he be? The smile on the black-faced instructor's face froze because he found that Fang Yan actually rushed past him. In other words, while he was talking to Zhou Xian, Fang Yan had already finished a lap of the field. How is this possible? The black-faced instructor stared at the students and asked, Did he cheat? No. The girls answered in unison. On the emotional scale, they were completely on Fang Yan's side. Even if Fang Yan really cheated, they wouldn't expose him. Besides, Fang Yan really didn't cheat. He really finished a lap. The black-faced instructor sneered and didn't say anything. He was ready to personally watch Fang Yan watch his back and watch every step he took. There were still 19 laps left. He didn't believe that he could finish all of them. Without waiting too long, Fang Yan ran past them again. Mr. Fang, you can do it. Mr. Fang, good job, moi. Mr. Fang, you are so handsome. The girls all cheered for Fang Yan. Su Qi was silent. She was still worried that he couldn't finish the race. Soon Fang Yan ran past them again. The 4th lap. The 5th lap. The 6th lap. After more than 10 laps, Fang Yan still looked like nothing had happened. His speed didn't decrease, his breathing wasn't out of breath, his footsteps were still light, and his running figure was still so handsome. His face was relaxed and there was no sign of fatigue on his face. There wasn't even a drop of sweat. This didn't make sense. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, the black-faced instructor would have said that Fang Yan had cheated. Even if he had run these 20 laps, he would have been exhausted by now. Even if he managed to persist, it would be impossible for him to have the same speed as the first lap. Such a good life form. Is this guy a monster? Because Fang Yan suddenly ran laps, not only the girls here were paying attention, but the boys on the field were also paying attention. The boys thought it was a little strange at first, but after Fang Yan ran more than 10 laps, they began to get excited. It was as if they were the ones who ran this kind of result. Hey bro, good job. Bro, how many laps have you run? Are you tired? Bro, which class are you from? What's your name? The black-faced instructor's comrades came over. They pointed at Fang Yan and looked at the black-faced instructor curiously, asking, "Your student? He's a good seedling. How could he be his student? Didn't you see that all the soldiers he brought are female? But that kid is really fierce. He ran more than 10 laps without his face turning red. Even we wouldn't be as strong as him, right? What's his background? Is he from the instructor's brigade? There are monsters like that over there, but they didn't send anyone over this time." The black-faced instructor looked at his teammates who were so excited that they wanted to drag Fang Yan to become sworn brothers. He said with a gloomy face, "Rosefinch Secondary, School Security." Chapter 509. When Fang Yan finished the 20th lap, the students applauded loudly. It was the applause of all 16 military training squads in the training field, which was a bit loud. Before Fang Yan reached the black-faced instructor, the girls cheered excitedly. At their age, they liked heroic novels or romantic things the most. In order to protect them, Fang Yan went through mountains of knives and seas of fire, and finally killed the devil in the castle. Yes, the black-faced instructor was the devil who imprisoned the princess. Mr. Fang, Mr. Fang, Mr. Fang. Fang Yan waved his hand at them, walked in front of the black-faced instructor and said, "Instructor, I have finished the 20 laps. Don't make it difficult for the students. They are a group of children who haven't grown up yet." The girls immediately turned against him. They all shouted, "We are not children, we are already adults. How can we be children?" The black-faced instructor stared at Fang Yan unkindly, but there was no more condescension. Before the black-faced instructor said anything, his group of comrades surrounded him. "Brother, you are amazing. What's your name? Did you come from the army before?" "I am Li Meng. Come shake my hand. Good skills, not out of breath, not beating heart." Who can do that? Anyway, I can't do it." Fang Yan smiled and shook hands with these military training instructors and said with a smile, "Brothers, you have worked hard. My name is Fang Yan. I am the school's security guard. No matter what you are, we like people who are capable. We like people who are capable. What you showed us just now really shocked us. We often train and run farther than you, but after running, we are almost paralyzed from exhaustion. You look like nothing has happened to you. You should be fine to run another 20 laps, right?" Fang Yan quickly waved his hand, wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, I can't, I'm forcing myself, I'm exhausted." "Be humble," the instructors said. Fang Yan took the initiative to walk in front of the black-faced instructor and said, "Come, shake hands. Things started because of me and will end because of me. I'll run these 20 laps as an apology. Don't take it to heart. Use your professional knowledge to let these students experience the demeanor of a real soldier." The black-faced instructor's face suddenly turned purple. He looked at Fang Yan embarrassedly and said, "I've always been against you. I've never been a likable person." Fang Yan explained seriously, "I didn't grow up well. It's not your fault. Fang Yan would often reflect on why people would view him as an enemy no matter where he went. Later on, he also thought of such a possibility. Could it be that his appearance was attracting hatred for him? Puchi! The girls roared with laughter. Some of them bent over, some of them fell down, and some of them had tears in their eyes. It's not your fault that I didn't grow properly. Who doesn't want to grow well? But, can this kind of thing be decided by oneself? This little security guard is so cute. The black-faced instructor also laughed. He reached out his rough big hand and shook Fang Yan's hand. He said, I also have to apologize to you. In fact, I saw that you were liked by the girls and I felt a little uncomfortable. I've been with them for a few days and I care about them every day, but I've never seen them treat me like this. The black-faced instructor secretly glanced at Su Qi and then quickly moved his eyes away. He said, I'm a little narrow-minded, so I wanted to find trouble with you and put you in your place. I didn't expect you to be so powerful. I asked you to run 20 laps, but you didn't scare me. Instead, you put me in my place. My words were a little vulgar, don't take it to heart. I'm used to speaking like this in the army, and I haven't changed this bad habit outside. We understand each other. Fang Yan said with a smile. I don't like to wear the security uniform, so I haven't changed it until now. Fang Yan waved to the students and said, Students, goodbye. Goodbye, Mr. Fang. The students warmly said goodbye to Fang Yan. There were also people who said that they would go to the security office to find Fang Yan and invite him to eat pickled fish at the school gate. Fang Yan smiled and turned to the security booth at the school gate. The black-faced instructor looked at Fang Yan walking away, then he turned to the students he led and said, I take back what I said just now, Teacher Fang Yan. He is a very good man and a very unyielding security guard. I believe that such a person, no matter what position he is in, he will make impressive achievements. Even if he is just a security guard now, but he is not an ordinary security guard. The girls applauded enthusiastically as if the person the black-faced instructor praised was their brother. The black-faced instructor's heart was sour and he thought, this kid is really a monster. He only came for a short while and he already won the hearts of dozens of girls. If I let him stay a little longer, I'm afraid that all the girls on the training ground will become his personal army, right? When Fang Yan returned to the security booth, Baldy asked, what happened with the noise on the field? Are those freshmen okay? They're okay. Fang Yan said with a smile. It's good that they're okay. I was afraid that the students and the instructor would not get along and cause trouble. It could also be that the instructor and the security guard don't get along. Fang Yan said with a smile. The bell rang and Fang Yan said to Baldy, I still have something to do, so I'll leave first. After that, Fang Yan walked toward the school's parking lot. Baldy was full of doubts. In the past, Fang Yan would wait until all the students left before he would get off work with them. Today he left in a hurry. Did something happen at home? Fang Yan's matter was Lu Chaoga's matter, and Lu Chaoga's matter was Baldy's matter. Thinking that something might have happened to Lu Chaoga, Baldy's mood became a little anxious. Lu Chaoga was his benefactor. If it wasn't for Lu Chaoga's acquisition of Rosefinch, Baldy would not be able to take up the prestigious position of the security director of Rosefinch Secondary, even if he had to endure for another 20 years until all the remaining hair on his head fell off. How many people stared at the chair under his butt? If it wasn't for Lu Chaoga's protection, would he be able to hold it? One must know how to repay kindness, but Baldy never knew how to repay kindness. Soon the mystery was revealed. The bell that signaled the end of class was still echoing in a corner of the campus. A group of girls in green military uniforms with military training caps in their hands sprinted toward the small security booth at the school gate like ferocious tigers. Looking at them running toward him, Baldy suddenly thought of a song. The tigers on the mountain don't eat people and they look quite cute. Whoosh. Those female tigers surrounded the security booth tightly, and the people at the back were still desperately squeezing to the front. Professional habits made Baldy want to go out and maintain order. Just as he was thinking about this, he realized he was trapped in the security booth and couldn't go out at all. Is Teacher Fang Yan here? A sweet girl asked aloud. Where's Fang Yan? Do you have a security guard named Fang Yan? The one who is very handsome, 100 times more handsome than you. This girl's question was more straightforward. Hand over Fang Yan to us. This girl was more barbaric. Baldy was dizzy from the noise, but he finally understood what was going on. In other words, these girls, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dozens of girls were looking for Fang Yan. Baldy was really confused. Didn't he just ask Fang Yan to patrol the freshman training ground? How did he bring back such a large group of girls in the blink of an eye? Even if he was a blooming rape flower, he shouldn't attract so many bees, right? Besides, he and his buddies walked around the freshman training ground every day. Because he was worried about the safety of the girls, he deliberately wandered in front of them a few times. It shouldn't have caused such a big scene, right? Of course, there were girls who took the initiative to hit on him. They threw over 100 yuan and said, "Security, buy me 2 boxes of mineral water." The more Baldy thought about it, the angrier he got. He slapped the tattered table in front of him. But the whole place was safe and there was silence. Baldy was very satisfied with the silent effect he created. He was about to show off the dignity of the security captain when the girls suddenly exploded. "Hey, what's wrong with you? Why did you slap the table? Do you think you look handsome when you slap the table? Ugly freak. You scared me. Give me back our teacher Fang Yan." Baldy finally found a chance to speak and shouted, "Fang Yan is home. He already got off work early and went home. Teacher, can you give me teacher Fang Yan's phone number?" A beautiful little girl blinked her big starry eyes at the Baldy. Anyone who saw this little ant would think that she was really cute. Baldy's face turned red. Someone actually called him teacher? Didn't they all call him Baldy? Moreover, this little girl was really pitiful. Baldy was dizzy. When he was about to tell them Fang Yan's phone number, he saw the other girl's eyes and suddenly became alert. "I don't know," Baldy said. "Say." The girls collectively gave him the middle finger. Fang Yan crossed the Rosefinch Bridge and entered the stone pillar path of the school known as the Love Corridor. When he was about to go to the parking lot to get his car, an abrupt voice suddenly rang in his ear. "Amitba. Benefactor, you are in a hurry. Where are you going? Tomorrow is autumn and the weather is great. If you don't mind, how about we have a chat?" Fang Yan was slightly shocked and began to look for the source of the voice. Chapter 5:10. With Fang Yan's current level of cultivation, he was extremely sensitive to his surroundings. He could not add a feather, nor could he drop a leaf. The wind blew the grass and the sound entered his ears. Rats scurried and snakes scurried and all entered his heart. However, Fang Yan did not sense anyone around him. In other words, that person was already close to him, but he did not sense it. On one hand, it proved that this person's ability was outstanding, and he had entered the Anata state. In a slightly more mysterious way of cultivation, he was a demigod. On the other hand, it also showed that this person was kind and did not have murderous intent. No matter who it was, no matter how strong that person was or how strong that person was, as long as he had murderous intent, it was easy to be detected. At least Fang Yan could detect it. Of course, if that person entered the invincible Vajra state and could hurt people with his mind alone, even Fang Yan would find it difficult to find out. Because the mind of a person was shapeless and the most difficult to capture. On the stone of seeking knowledge sat a monk and a Taoist. The monk was a white-browed old monk and the Taoist was a grey-robed Taoist. Both of them were old acquaintances of Fang Yan. Of course, if one looked closely, they were not very familiar. Fang Yan came over with a face full of surprise, and reached out to grab the grey-robed Taoist's hand. The Taoist waved his sleeve and the hand magically disappeared. Fang Yan reached out again and the Taoist's other hand also disappeared. Fang Yan smiled bitterly and said, "Master, I haven't seen you for a long time. I just wanted to shake hands with you to show that we are close. Why are you avoiding me?" "I'm afraid that I won't be able to pull it back if I shake hands," the grey-robed Taoist said with a double meaning. After the previous few encounters, he had a deep understanding of Fang Yan. This guy was someone who would not get up early without benefits. If he suddenly became intimate with you, it must be because he wanted some treasure on you. If you don't want him to take advantage of you, then don't have any contact with him. Even shaking hands to show etiquette was not acceptable. "Why can't I pull it back? It's impossible for me to marry a Taoist priest." Fang Yan said with a smile, "I haven't seen you for a long time. Are you still healthy?" "He was fine yesterday, but he didn't come tomorrow." "I don't know today," said the Taoist priest. "Yesterday was pretty good, today was pretty good, and tomorrow will be even better." Fang Yan said firmly, "Both of you haven't had dinner yet, right? I know a good hot pot restaurant in front of the school." "Oh right, you guys don't eat hot pot. I know a good vegetarian restaurant. How about I treat you guys to some vegetarian food? Seeing the monk and the old Taoist sizing him up with a smile, Fang Yan was somewhat discouraged and said, "All right, I know the two of you are an exception. It's fine even if you don't eat or drink for several days without eating or drinking. Since you've come to look for me, there must be something." The white-browed monk looked at Fang Yan and asked, "Is there hatred in your heart?" "Yes." Fang Yan nodded. "Hatred overflows the heavens. What do you want?" "Using blood to solve it." Fang Yan said, "Blood for blood." If someone else asked him such a question, he would slap them and scold back, "It's none of your business." If a family member asked him such a question, he would give an ambiguous answer and reply, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." However, the people who asked him this question were the monk and the Taoist priest, so there was no need for Fang Yan to hide anything. Because all concealment was deception and blasphemy. Perhaps they knew Fang Yan better than Fang Yan. The monk and the Taoist priest looked at each other, and the monk smiled silently and said, "Because there is love, there is hatred. Because there is hatred, there is the heart to kill. A person who only knows kindness is a good person, and a person who only knows evil is a bad person. However, a person who has great love and can tolerate great hatred is a person with great wisdom." Fang Yan stared at the monk with a vigilant face and said, "What are you trying to say? My mother was born in a scholarly family, and my grandfather was a prime minister in the academic world. I've studied a lot of books since I was a child. Don't think that you can fool me by saying something I don't understand." The monk and the Taoist priest laughed. Tianjizi looked at Fang Yan and said, "Let me ask you, have you had a hard time?" This question made Fang Yan stunned. Had he had a hard time? Of course he had had a hard time. Unspeakably hard. His father had died tragically at the gate of Swallow Dock, and he, Feng Yiqing Shui, had rushed all the way, but he still couldn't see him for the last time. He had too many regrets and remorse in his heart. He had too many things he didn't say, and he had too many things he didn't do. In fact, when he faced that man, he only knew how to take, and he didn't have time to return. He felt that he owed too much, so he observed mourning for 3 years to accompany him. However, every day of those 3 years was a kind of torture, and every night of those 3 years was a torment. He couldn't taste the food and he couldn't sleep well at night. Why? Because his father had been killed and the murderer was still at large. However, every time he was filled with hostility and murderous intent, the heart of Tai Chi in his heart would spin crazily again and again. Yes, what was the heart of Tai Chi? It was the power of nature. Naturally, it was green, healthy, warm, sweet, and cozy. It was the sunshine, the rain hitting the banana leaves, the butterflies playing with flowers, and the plum blossoms in the snow. It didn't tolerate darkness, and it didn't accept some extremely negative things or emotions. Hostility, murderous intent, and hatred. These things were contrary to Fang Yan's nature. In other words, he wanted to use the heart of Tai Chi to help him get revenge. However, the heart of Tai Chi strongly rejected Fang Yan in this state. It felt like his body and spirit were about to separate. Giving up hostility, murderous intent, and hatred was also contrary to Fang Yan's nature. He couldn't do it, and it was impossible for him to do it. Therefore, Fang Yan was entangled between ice and fire, between relief and hatred, and between picking it up and letting it go every day and night. This was a heart disease. A heart disease that made people wish they were dead. Yi Rou knew that Yi Rou could only accompany him silently. Fang Hui knew that Fang Hui asked Fang Yan to go out and have a look. No one else knew, and no one else had a way to know. It was calm on the surface, but turbulent waves were surging in the dark. Fang Yan was calm. Fang Yan forced a smile, but this kind of pain really seeped into his heart and bones. "Pain," Fang Yan said. It was just a word, but it was said with great force. "All living beings suffer, and we are here to understand your pain," the monk said. Fang Yan was overjoyed. He looked at the gray-robed Taoist priest expectantly and said, "Master, you only need to teach me the move that you used before and I won't feel all the pain." Fang Yan thought he was an optimist, a man who was easy to get rid of. A sports car, a villa, a beautiful woman, and a spring in the old wood, and he would follow you happily. Tianjizi shook his head and said, "I can't see through it, and I can't see through it. You just said that this move is mine, so it can only be mine. When you truly see through it, you'll have your own spring in life. At that time it will be hard for you to say that the great Tao is one. Which way is the right way? Which way is the right way? Who can know without going through it?" Fang Yan wanted to press these two old guys to the ground and beat them up again. If you want to reject it, then reject it. Why do you have to say so much high-sounding nonsense? It's like I'm ignorant and childish if I force it. But I really don't understand what you are talking about. Although Fang Yan thought he was knowledgeable, he still liked to communicate with people in plain words. So he stared at the monk and the Taoist priest with an unfriendly expression and asked, "You mean, you won't teach me the move?" "We can't teach you. We can't teach you either," the monk said with a smile. "Then why did you come to me for no reason?" Fang Yan looked at the monk and the Taoist priest with disdain and said, "Two old men sitting on this lover's path will easily cause misunderstandings." Chapter 5:11. A gentle breeze blew and ripples appeared on the surface of the lake. The warm sunlight shone evenly on the ground, giving everything a layer of golden coat. The red buoy floating on the surface of the lake rose and fell. That was the teasing behavior of the fish before they took the bait. It's just like humans. Before they do anything, they will test the waters in every possible way. Until they are sure that this behavior will not bring any danger, then they will swallow it. But what they do not know is that the devil is 10 times as tall as the righteous. Those fish test everything thinking that they are safe, but they do not know that the safest moment is also the moment of danger. As long as there is greed, one foot has already stepped into the depths of hell. As the young man spoke, he shook his wrist and a red carp was thrown into the air by him. The carp was full of strength, and even though its body was dehydrated, it was still struggling. The fishing rod was pulled and bent and the fishing line swayed in the air. The man held the fishing rod in his hand, skillfully pulling back and forth with the carp's movements. Pop! The carp fell to the ground, spitting out bubbles one after another, its tail powerlessly swinging. The young man put down the fishing rod, walked over to take the carp off the hook and carried it with both hands to the side of the lake. Bang! He threw the carp into the lake, creating a large splash. The carp dizzily swam around in the lake a few times, looked back at the man who released it and spat out a series of bubbles. Those bubbles formed the word idiot, and then plunged into the depths of the lake, unwilling to show its head again. The carp that has bitten the bait has lost its spiritual energy, and will never have the chance to leap over the dragon gate again, the old man holding the rod said warmly. The old man was wearing a black robe and a bamboo hat, and his bare feet stepped on the mud. His trousers were half rolled up and his calves were covered in mud. He looked like a wild villager who farmed and gathered firewood. The brim of the hat was lowered and his appearance could not be seen clearly. His entire upper body was hidden in the shadow of the bamboo hat. The young man chuckled and said, "There are millions of carps in the river, but how many have the chance to leap over the dragon gate? Most of them were ordinary people with mediocre aptitudes. For thousands of years, there were only 2 or 3 that managed to ascend to become dragons. The rest had all become delicacies on the human dining table. That's it. The first is fate, the second is fate, and the third is geomancy. The first is fate, the second is good fortune, and the third is whether the place where the ancestral grave is buried hides wind and chi. I'm not afraid of the millions of mortal bodies, but I'm afraid that someone will be able to break through the destiny and successfully ascend to become a dragon. At that time I will become your true enemy," the old man said with a smile. There was a hint of warning in his words. "Master, do you think Fang Yan is the carp that has the opportunity to make the great leap?" the young man said with a smile. "Of the 9 paths of the Dragon Gate he has already passed the first 8. The old man sighed and said, "Previously the divination I gave you was about purple clouds rising and a lucky star hanging high. Your fate is red with a hint of purple, so it goes without saying that you're rich and powerful. However, whether you can transform from a fake dragon to a real dragon still requires some tempering. If he succeeded, he would never be able to enjoy it for the rest of his life. If the tempering fails, you'll lose all the dragon's fate, and I'm afraid you'll degenerate into an ordinary river carp." The young man put on the bait in his hand and threw the hook into the river, but he didn't care about the fishing rod that was placed on the stand. Standing on the wide surface of the lake and looking at the distant mountains and clear waters, his heart became infinitely broad. "Master, do you still remember what I said to you when I left the Qingtian Taoist temple?" the young man asked. His body was bathed in the sunlight and he looked handsome and extraordinary. In an instant he became an ambiguous man that girls liked. "You said that the world is big but heroes are few and far between. A life without an opponent is lonely. It's better to live alone in the mountains and seek Taoism. That's right. A famous general is like a beautiful woman. Without a beautiful woman, there's no need for love. Without a famous general as an opponent, it's better to live in seclusion in the mountains and seek Taoism. Who knows, I might be able to find a few opponents among the deities and have a good fight. The man's heroic spirit reached the clouds and his voice was powerful. If it's just a Fang Yan, then life is too lonely. If it's just the current Fang Yan, then life is too boring. I look forward to Fang Yan's growth, I look forward to his ascension. The man's eyes were glowing with excitement. Let me live crazily or let me die happily. But the process cannot be mediocre. What a madman, the old man sighed. Fang Yan mourned for 3 years at Swallow Dock, and also pulled the world's attention away from Flower City for 3 years. Lu Chaoga is also an extraordinary woman. In 3 short years she helped him build a large commercial kingdom. Gu Zhonglan, Hatong Willow, these young talents are all in his hands. With the help of Du Qing and other heroes of the underworld, his momentum has been set. Flower City has become a place for him to soar. We can't stay here for long. This battle should be quick and fierce. We can't drag our feet and enter his dojo. Du Qing is someone I like, but I didn't think he would be used by him. What a pity. The young man said with a regretful expression. If he can't be used, then let's destroy him. Wonderful, the old man said. A generation of beauties. It was said that this was the most popular nightclub in Flower City. In the private room of the nightclub's lobby, 2 groups of people were confronting each other. Shan Pao, you must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. You dare to dine and dash in my territory? Do you want to die? Brother Wolf stood in front of a group of men in black, staring coldly at the short fatso opposite him. Brother Wolf, isn't that a bit too much? We've been brothers for many years. I'm just a little short on cash tonight. I've already told Manager Zhang that I'll remember this debt and pay it back when I have money. How can you say that I'm eating and dashing? How bad would it sound if people heard about it? Shan Pao said with a cheeky smile. He didn't take Brother Wolf's threat to heart. Brother Wolf stared at Shan Pao with a gloomy look and said, What? Want to go back on my word? Shan Pao, aren't you afraid of drowning? You know that I have a big shot behind me. If you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for not warning you in advance. Think about your own weight before you speak. Don't think that you're invincible just because you have a few pounds of fat. I'm afraid you won't be able to decide how you die. Brother Wolf, aren't you threatening your brother? I know. Who is your brother Wolf? He's the #1 dog under Master Qing. Oh, you're not really the #1 dog. Master Qing has 3 guardians and 8 Vajras. It's said that there's also a mysterious thug called Master 13, a godly person who can sit on the same level as Master Qing. Brother Wolf, count yourself. How many big shots are there above you? Can you even finish hugging Buddha's legs? So Shan Pao isn't going to pay? Brother Wolf, I've just explained. I really don't have money. Why don't Brother Wolf help me sleep tonight? I owe Brother Wolf a favor. If there's a chance in the future, I'll treat Brother Wolf to a drink. What do you think? Shan Pao said with a smile, as if he was a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Shan Pao, you're forcing me. Brother Wolf, I'll force you tonight. What can you do to me? The smile on Shan Pao's face gradually faded. He stared at Brother Wolf fiercely and said, I'm not going to pay. I'm eating a free meal from your beautiful woman. I'm playing with your girl and not paying. What can you do to me? Brother Wolf waved his hand and rushed towards Shan Pao. The men in black behind Brother Wolf had long been ready. After receiving Brother Wolf's order to attack, they pounced on the earth cannon opposite them. Brothers, go! Shan Pao roared. His short legs kicked the ground and he jumped up like a cannon. He clenched his fist and punched towards Brother Wolf. At the coastal port. What? Are you Qinghong bullying us? We're unloading our own goods. Why should we listen to your orders? Why should we pay for you? Who do you think you are? Wang Dafa, don't lie through your teeth. Are you the owner of these goods? Why don't you show us some proof? We Qinghong do business for the public and private. These goods were entrusted to us by the customers. We have to look after them. If you unload them, how are we going to answer to the customers? I said we're the owner of these goods. We are the owner of these goods. You want proof? Hey brothers. Who knows how to write? Write a note and burn it for them. Let them read the words on it in the afterlife. Destroy them for me. Brothers F***ck them. At the bus stop. Thief. Catch the thief. A girl who looked like a student screamed. An ordinary-looking man was holding a mobile phone in his hand. He was running frantically through the crowd. Bang. His head smashed into a sturdy wall, and his body retreated several steps before he fell to the ground on his butt. He raised his head and looked over. It wasn't a wall but a tall man in sportswear. The man stared at him fiercely and scolded, "Are you blind? Don't you know what this place is? All the shops here are our tenants. You dare to come here and cheat people. Believe it or not, I will break your legs." "I really don't believe it." The thief smiled triumphantly. He suddenly opened his mouth and roared, "Help, help, the hooligan is hitting people. Help. They're here, they're here." A group of men in black came from all directions and pounced on the tall man in the sports attire. The man in sportswear was stunned for a moment. Then he waved his fists to welcome the storm-like attacks. In five-star hotel lobbies, at bus stops, at tourist attractions, and in shopping malls, this kind of thing kept happening. Chapter 5:12. That night, the video of the hooligans fighting each other was uploaded to the internet. Once it was uploaded, it became a trending video on all major web portals and social media platforms. "Oh my god, this is too scary. Those hooligans are beating people up at the train station. Are they filming a movie? This is an international five-star hotel. Those scumbags are beating up foreign guests. Isn't this going to cause an international dispute? We must get rid of these scumbags and return watching to a peaceful living environment." Countless people left comments criticizing the hooligans' vile behavior, calling on the government to bring these bad guys to justice. Netizens all over the country began to criticize Huaqing's public security and the government's inaction. They allowed these hooligans to make dirty money. The entire Huaqing became restless. It was like a barrel of dynamite that was about to explode. Under such strong pressure of public opinion, under the terrifying public opinion that was deliberately guided and manipulated by people with ulterior motives, the government officials could no longer sit still, and so could the police. Under a certain someone's order, the entire city's security forces were mobilized. Countless police cars whizzed out, pouncing on various strongholds that they were already familiar with. Clear Sky Building. Clear Sky Group Headquarters. Standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows on the top floor of Clear Sky Building, one could overlook most of Huaqing's night view. A man who was not tall or big but looked very powerful and could easily give people a sense of security stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. His hands were in the pockets of his pants, and his expression was solemn as he looked at the traffic outside that was like a rainbow and the lights were like a dragon. He liked the city. He shared the same fate as this city. This city was his soul and skeleton. It was the starting point and the peak of his career. He came to Huaqing after he dropped out of high school. He started from the bottom of society and worked his way up to where he was now. Now that he had billions in wealth, he also had unparalleled power. How many times had he bled? How many tears had he shed? How many times had he been injured? How many flattering words had he said? How many times had he bowed? How many times had he knelt? But now, someone wanted to take everything away from him. How could he accept such a blow? How could he accept such an arrangement? He couldn't accept it. DD. Inside the room there was the sound of the password being verified, and then the door was pushed open from the outside. Leah rushed in anxiously and said anxiously, "Uncle, something happened at the pier. The station was swept, all the bars and nightclubs were ordered to close, and our people were also taken away. I just received the statistics and now 431 people have been captured. The number is still increasing. Did something happen to Tiger? Something happened over at Lord Hu's side. Lord Hu has also been captured. What's the situation with Luo Badeo? Something happened on Luo Badeo's side too. Luo Badeo got the news in advance and ran away with his wife and child. He hasn't contacted us yet. Where's Xiao Dao? Xiao Dao was injured during the conflict with the people from Mo Bay. He is still being treated at the hospital." Du Qing didn't continue asking. Instead he turned around and looked at the night view of Huaqing outside the window. Leah became anxious and said, "Uncle, let's quickly think of a way to save them." Du Qing did not reply, as if he did not hear Leah's words. "Uncle, Leah, I understand. Du Qing interrupted Li Ye's words, stopping him from continuing. I know everything you've told me, Wang Yao said. But don't we need to do anything? Li Ye said in a low voice. Uncle, someone is framing us. I know. Du Qing nodded. If we can't be used, then we can destroy them. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If I was in that position, I would also do the same, but we are too aggrieved. Li Ye said with red eyes. We didn't do anything bad. We are still trying our best to help maintain the order of this city. Uncle often tells us that only when the city is developed properly can we earn big money. What future can we have by fighting and killing? Other than throwing away a few innocent corpses, the money we earn is probably not even enough to pay for our brother's medical expenses. That's why we, Qinghong, have always been doing business properly. We set the rules, and not only do we require us to do things within the rules. Even though our background is not good, we are now legitimate businessmen. Without us, Qinghong, what kind of mess would other people make in the city? If it wasn't for us, Qinghong, would the others be so law-abiding? On what basis? To push us to the guillotine and hang us to death. Silly child, cleaning up is the trend of the times. Du Qing said with a smile. No matter who sits in my position, they would do the same thing as me. Now that the country is rich and the people are at peace, the world is at peace. It's not like the chaotic world in the past where human lives are worthless. No matter what you do, you have to follow the rules. Those who don't follow the rules and use unscrupulous methods have long lost their lives. But this time we are indeed aggrieved. We follow the rules, but other people don't want us to follow the rules. That's why they pushed us out. Who asked us to attract the wind and offend them? Uncle, don't you have a lot of connections? Give those friends of yours a call and ask them to make an exception, Li Ye said aloud. Du Qing shook his head and said, We have just been pushed to the heart of the struggle. There are countless pairs of eyes staring at us. Countless media outlets are swarming towards watching. Asking for help at this time will only make things difficult for them. If they refuse, it will hurt the friendship between both parties. If they clench their teeth and help, they might drag their true friends down with them. At this time, what we need to do is not to disturb anyone. They will instead remember our kindness. When things calm down, they will remember this favor and think of a way to return it. Humans, when you think for yourself, you should also think for others. It's not easy for everyone to live. But what about Tiger Lord and the rest? Li asked anxiously. Tiger Lord was one of the 3 great King Kongs under Du Qing. He had a high position and authority in Qinghong, second only to Du Qing and 13th Master. Tiger Lord being captured was a disaster for Qinghong, because he had too many of Du Qing and Qinghong's secrets in his hands. If Du Qing didn't think of a way to get him out, would Tiger Lord still keep Qinghong's secret? It was not suitable to ask for help, and there was no chance to save him. To the current Du Qing, it was indeed a dilemma. We have to believe in Tiger Lord. Du Qing said, Believe in our own brothers. Since they have already made their move, their target must be Uncle. Li Ye said worriedly, Uncle, find a place to hide. Don't be in the company and don't go to any other places where you need to show your face. I will summon the great demons to protect you. Li Ye, there's no need. Du Qing said, It's good that everyone is safe. We don't need to pull them out from the shadows to show everyone. But our security here is still a little weak. If anything happens to Uncle, some things depend on schemes and some depend on fate. Du Qing said with a smile. When the schemes are exhausted, it's time to gamble with your life. I have been scheming with others for my entire life, and I have also gambled with my life. The fortune teller said that my life is tough, ordinary people can't beat it. Uncle, Du Qing sighed lightly, looked at Li Ye and said, Let's go. Let's go home. Li Ye nodded and said, It's too dangerous at home. How is it not dangerous? How about, Uncle, temporarily leave Flower City? We can't leave. Du Qing rejected this suggestion. No matter what, we can't leave. If we leave Flower City, it will be exactly what they want. We will no longer have any chance to turn the tables. I will go back with Uncle. Li Ye said. Du Qing smiled, walked to the door, put on his jacket and walked outside. Li Ye followed closely behind, afraid that something might happen to Uncle. Under the protection of a few bodyguards, Du Qing and Li Ye took a special elevator to the underground parking lot. For safety reasons, there was a garage under the clear sky building that was completely isolated from the other areas. There were several different kinds of cars parked in the garage. making it convenient for Du Qing to choose a car according to his needs. Just as they walked to the entrance of the garage, they saw a tall man sitting on the roof of a white Volkswagen. Li Ye's eyes turned cold, quickly ran in front of Du Qing, stared closely at the man in black and shouted, "Great Demon, why are you here?" Clang! The Great Demon jumped down from the roof, grinned sinisterly and said, "Master Qing is in trouble, I am here to protect Master Qing." "Great Demon, have you forgotten the rules? Without Master Qing's summon, you cannot appear in Clear Sky Building," Li Ye angrily scolded and said, "Master Qing understands your intentions. Now that Master Qing is safe and sound, you should also return to where you should be." The Great Demon did not leave and said with a smile, "Since you are here, how can you leave just like that? Disregarding Master Qing's safety, such a thing is not something I can do." "Then you are disobeying orders?" Li Ye coldly stared at the Great Demon and said, "This is the loyalty you are showing?" Du Qing patted Li Ye's shoulder, indicating that she should not be agitated. Then he walked in front of Li Ye, looked at the Great Demon who was standing there with a sharp blade in his hand and said coldly, "Great Demon, someone asked you to stand here and take my life, right? Master Qing is wise." The Great Demon laughed loudly and said, "Qing Hong collapses, Chief Du Qing flees in fear of punishment, but is intercepted and stabbed in the heart by his subordinates. Master Qing, you must like this kind of news headline, right? Someone asked me to stand guard here, no matter what, I have to make you stay. Master Qing won't make things difficult for us little brothers, right?" Crash. The bodyguards in front of Du Qing took the initiative to rush toward the Great Demon. Chapter 513. You're courting death. The Great Demon slightly bent his body and charged towards the bodyguards in black. The first man in black approached and swung his fist towards the Great Demon's face. The Great Demon leapt up and used the dagger in his hand to cut open the man's neck. The second man in black arrived. The Great Demon coincidentally dropped down and stomped on the man's chest. The man in black fell to the ground and blocked the charging figures of the others. The man in black who had his throat slit knelt on the ground and held his neck, unable to say a word. Blood dyed the black floor red. This bloody purge had finally begun. The dagger in the Great Demon's hand was stained with blood. He stuck out his tongue and lightly licked the blade, then sucked the blood into his mouth and said excitedly, "The blood of my own brothers tastes so different. You're a traitor." "Not our brothers," Li Ye said with a cold voice. She wanted to stand in front of Du Qing again but was stopped by him. "Traitor?" The Great Demon sneered. He looked at Du Qing evilly and said, "Master Qing, she said I'm a traitor, do you think she's right?" Du Qing's expression was calm, but his voice was cold and contained a hint of killing intent. He said, "Everyone has their own independent choice, I can't say much. However, words that have been spoken are like water that has been spilled. Once you step forward, you won't have a chance to regret it. Since you've chosen to be so ruthless, I hope you won't regret your choice in the future." "I've chosen to be so ruthless?" The Great Demon laughed loudly. He stared at Du Qing fiercely and asked, "Master Qing, you said I've chosen to be so ruthless. I really want to know who was the one who chose to be so ruthless. Lord Tiger has been caught by the cops and the brothers have been scattered. Lord Green, my respected Lord Green, my most beloved young man, as the leader of Green and Red, shouldn't you stand up and save your brothers at this time? Where are you planning to go?" "How do you know Uncle isn't planning to save them?" Li Ye retorted bluntly and said, "Uncle has his own considerations, what does a simple-minded guy like you know? Great Demon, get out of my way. I've already sent an alarm upstairs. When they come down you'll be dead. Li Ye, you don't have to use this little trick anymore. The people above won't receive your warning and they won't come down to save us," Du Qing said arrogantly. "You've been deserted by everyone and no one will stand up for you anymore. Master Green, do you know why? Because you are a heartless coward. Because you don't care about your brothers' lives at all." Du Qing looked at the Great Demon and said, "Did Lord 13 teach you to say these words?" "I said it," said a hoarse male voice. The man was tall, nearly 2 meters in height. And because of his fat body, when he walked he was like a lofty moving mountain. His head was smooth and shiny under the illumination of the white light above his head. Behind Lord 13 a group of black-clothed men were coming over. Du Qing looked at the black-clothed men and smiled. "Old Kai Fu Fire Boss Zhang Xing. They all say that I, Du Qing, have 3 great guardians and 8 great Vajrapani. Now one of the 3 great Vajrapani is here and 3 of the 8 great Vajrapani are here. Lord 13, is everyone here? The black-clothed men were a bit ashamed. Some of them looked away, unwilling to meet Du Qing's eyes. They didn't come to protect Du Qing but to stop him. Lord 13 stood in front of the crowd with his large leather shoes, looking down at Du Qing and asked, "How long have we known each other?" 22 years, Du Qing answered. 22 years, 7 months and 8 days, Lord 13 said. Do you know why I remember this date so clearly? Because on this day 22 years, 7 months and 8 days, you and I were still carrying bags at the docks. Because I was the strongest, the fastest and earned the most money. The foreman was jealous and wanted to deduct my pay, so I argued with him and was almost beaten to death by them. It was you who single-handedly charged into the crowd with a kitchen knife and pulled me back from under their punches and kicks. If it weren't for you, my corpse would have sunk into the sea that day. From that day on, I, Du Qing, made up my mind to do anything for you, Du Qing. If you said you wanted to kill, I went to sharpen my knife. If you said you wanted to go into the sea of fire, I went to get wet. If you said you wanted me to do it, I did it for you. If you gave me an order, I would kill for you without fear of death. Although I'm the 13th child in my family, I only have you as my big brother in my heart and I only recognize you. When we first came out to conquer the world, countless people wanted to step on us, countless gangs wanted to destroy us. We killed our way through, prayed to Buddha, and finally sought refuge under Li Xiyuan, the leader of Qing Hong. Only then did we truly settle down and only then did we truly get the chance to display our skills. Qing Hong has a lot of troubles. Many people in and out of the sect wanted to step on you, but who stood up for you? Some people secretly played dirty tricks, and who brought their brothers to chase after them for dozens of miles. Later, Boss Li died of illness and countless people in Qing Hong wanted to take over. Who helped you get the throne under your butt? Who made you the #1 person in Qing Hong? Du Qing looked at Lord 13 and said, "So? Is this the reason why you betrayed me?" "I never wanted to betray you. Even if I'm standing in front of you now, I never thought of betraying you." Lord 13 said with an agitated expression, "But Lord Qing, my big brother, tell me, what are you planning to do? Tell me the truth, are you planning to give up on our brothers? Those brothers who fought with us all the way but now they've become an eyesore?" Du Qing sneered and said, "This is the reason why you gathered to stop me? I don't think so." "Lord Qing, now that things have come to this, are you still not willing to give us a clear answer?" Lord 13 said with a gloomy expression, "Our brothers risked their lives for you and we've taken on countless scapegoats for you. We just want justice, we just want to ask for an explanation. Did you think that our brothers were an eyesore so you casually got rid of them?" Du Qing sighed and said, "Old 13, it's been so many years but you've never been good at scheming. You're a valiant general and no one in Qing Hong is your match. Fighting and killing are your forte, so why do you have to sacrifice your forte?" Du Qing looked at the Qing Hong subordinates standing behind Lord 13 and said, "Everything happened too suddenly, and it hasn't even been 5 hours since it started. My brothers, in such a short time, you've already gathered to rebel against me. And the reason for your betrayal is that I want to give up on my brothers. What I want to know is, who told you that I want to give up on you? Who told you that I'm not going to save them?" Du Qing said angrily, and his aura was extremely imposing. Everyone's eyes avoided his gaze. If you want to incriminate someone, there's always a reason. It's just that someone offered a good price and you guys want to make your betrayal seem more justified. We're all brothers, so there's no need for this kind of hypocrisy, right? We've all been in the same boat for so many years, so who doesn't know each other? Looks like Master Qing isn't willing to give everyone an explanation. It's no longer important whether I give you an explanation or not. No matter what I say or do, you guys won't believe me now." Du Qing sneered. "Now is the time for you to give the people behind you an explanation, isn't it? Master Qing, then please forgive us for being rude." Lord 13 waved his hand and the men in black behind him pushed forward step by step, forcing Du Qing and Liya into the parking lot. There was no space for them to move or retreat. "Don't worry, we'll definitely give Master Qing some face. Being betrayed by the people you rely on, this kind of thing in itself is quite shameful," Du Qing said. Du Qing clapped his hands and the brick wall behind him was pushed to the ground with a rumble. A large circular hole suddenly appeared on the wall between this independent parking lot and the big parking lot. It was a hole that had been opened before. Whoosh! Countless men in black rushed out from the hole, and with sharp weapons in their hands, they pressed in the direction of Lord 13 and the others. They lined up in front of Du Qing and the others and glared at Lord 13 and the others. The blades in their hands flashed with a frightening cold light. It's Brother De Chao and the others. Green Wolf, isn't he in the hospital? And Xiao Dao, he's also back. Deep in the crowd, Du Qing's tired voice sounded. Brothers killing each other is the most tragic thing in the world. There's no winner in this battle, and when we're facing each other, we're already the losers. The conspirators are hateful, but the greedy ones are equally unforgivable. Since you've chosen to take this step, your brotherhood has been lost and you've all become Qing Hong's traitors. Then let this end here. Du Qing's voice disappeared, and the rows of men in black in front of him began to charge forward. Very quickly the two sides began to fight. Liya had been protected by Du Qing, and when she saw the two sides fighting fiercely, she looked at Du Qing with a face full of shock and said, "Uncle, you already knew that Lord 13 and the others would betray you?" "I didn't know." Du Qing said, "I only guessed. The outside world is in chaos and there will naturally be all kinds of hidden dangers. It's just like how you only have a cold, but when your body is weak, every kind of germ in the air will become your enemy." Liya understood what Du Qing meant. When Flower City suddenly had so many bad things that were closely related to Qing Hong, he already had a sense of danger. The most powerful people around him were also the people who were most likely to betray him. Thus he made some preparations for this. And these preparations happened to save their lives. What happened to the brotherly bond? What happened to their mutual trust? You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.